Before we start the meeting, we've got another minute. I'm just going to tell you that Mr. Maurer is having surgery on his legs today, and that we talked to his wife Paula just maybe a half hour ago, when he was just coming out of the anesthetic, and things are going okay. They don't know too much else yet, but just so you know where Mr. Maurer is. And it looks like it's flipped over, so it is 6 o'clock. So I'm going to call the meeting to order. And a roll call.
Mayor Breeden.
Here.
Mr. Heyman.
Here.
Ms. Stevens.
Here.
We have 3 present with 1 absent, Mr. Maurer.
Okay. You're going to do it now instead, or are you going to wait?
I'll explain it now. Thank you, Madam Mayor. So tonight we have something a little unusual with a special concurrent meeting. That means that at least 24 hours in advance, the special meeting was noticed. And this, by concurrent, it just means that we're not going to have 2 pledges of allegiance. We're going to open both meetings, and we are going to place the special meeting item after the invocation. So when we ask that when the council approves the agenda, that the agenda is being approved with both agendas, both the special meeting and the regular meeting, and with the special item placed after the invocation.
Okay. So with that, we will do approval of the agenda.
I move approval of both agendas with the item inserted after the invocation.
Second.
Please vote.
Are these working?
Our screens aren't up. Does that make any difference? Is there something that needs to be done?
It's still behind you. I'm not sure if they're not on. We have 3 ayes with 1 absent. Motion does carry.
Okay. All right. If you'll stand with me for the pledge.
Just hit the button. No signal.
Go ahead.
I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Please remain standing. Lord, be with us tonight. We have a lot of people here. I know everybody wants to speak. Let's remember that we are one community working together, and that our whole goal is to do what is best for the city of Ridgecrest. We thank you for your guidance. We thank you for your inspiration. And in your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, Lloyd.
Okay, so I will do the staff presentation on the special item. Proposed action, accepting resignation of Councilmember Wallace Martin, giving notice to the public of the vacancy, and directing staff to place an item on a future meeting agenda concerning filling of the vacancy. So the city manager received notice from Councilmember Vice Mayor Wallace Martin. Mr. Martin tendered his resignation. So the way that the law works on this is that the state law provides 2 possibilities here for filling the vacancy. There was some confusion in earlier reporting, so just to clarify, these options do not involve, neither one involves the county stepping in. That was, my colleague misspoke about that. So the 2 options are, according to state law, either holding a special election or appointing a new city council member, the council voting to appoint a new member. In either case, the appointed or the specially elected member will serve only the remainder of the vacated term. Mr. Martin was elected in November 2016. That 4-year term runs till November 2020. So however the vacancy is filled, that position will only last until the November 2020 election. So simply as a way of giving notice to the public of where we're at and what has happened, we're recommending that the council vote to note the resignation of Councilmember Martin. I'd like to add a phrase to the staff report under action requested. I think it should be note the resignation of Councilmember Martin and determine that there is a vacancy on the council. Note those in the minutes, and then direct staff to place an item on a future meeting about how to fill the vacancy. So this means that this vote would not be to decide whether to hold a special election or to appoint, but simply to place it on a meeting agenda. Okay, Ms. Stevens asks about next, and I think the city manager would like to recommend that.
Yeah, staff was recommending that it be the next council meeting on December 4th.
Okay. Is there a motion or any discussion? Okay, motion.
I motion approval.
Second.
Do we need to take public comment, though?
It's not
Is that
required.
appropriate? All we're doing is accepting something. Is that appropriate?
Right. It's not prohibited, so it's up to your discretion if you'd like to have public comment on it. I think there's a lot to say for that this is not quite a monumental decision. We're simply noting the facts in the record. So I'll leave it to the body's discretion about whether it calls for public comment.
I would like to say if you have public comment on that, let's do it under public comment.
The general public comment. Sure.
Yes,
Can
general
we-
public comment.
Make sure, though, that, because we limit public comment
To
period
1 hour.
to 1 hour, and if anybody
5
has,
minutes.
but
yeah.
but if people have out things, because it's on the agenda, if people have things that aren't on the agenda, can we make sure that, I just don't want to prohibit anyone here that's,
We're not going to. We're
okay,
just going to say they understand at the end of the hour, and that nobody speaks twice until everybody has spoken, and that is what we have done in the past.
okay.
Okay, so motion has been made and seconded.
It's going to be a roll call vote. Mayor Breeden?
Aye.
Mr. Heyman?
Aye.
Ms. Stevens?
Aye.
3 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Maurer. The motion does carry.
Okay, thank you. City Attorney's report, do you have anything else?
Nothing further to add. Thank you very much.
Okay, now we will come to public comment, and Lloyd, if you would say.
Yes, I'm sorry. Madam Mayor. Okay, so general public comment period. This is the time when the public has an opportunity to say what's on their mind about matters that are within the subject matter of the council. Time is limited to 5 minutes per person, with the entire public comment period limited to 1 hour. And we ask as a courtesy to respect everyone's time that if you're able to try to line up at least one person behind the one who's speaking so that we don't take time approaching the podium. Thank you.
And as usual, if we are not going to let you speak twice, and so please get it in your 5 minutes unless the hour is not been used. All right. Please, public comment. Come forward, identify yourself, please.
Hello, my name is Eric Catlin, 1233 West Boston. I came and saw you guys 2 weeks ago on the 6th and let you guys know about California Assembly Bill 1146. I was just curious where we're at with that.
We asked it to go back to committee. Has it gone there?
It's going to be on the Quality of Life Committee meeting in January.
Okay.
In January?
quality of life meeting is going to be canceled due to the holidays.
For the 2nd?
That's what I was told was canceled for December.
Gotcha. Okay.
So it'll be in January.
Okay, so as of right now, BMX is not allowed in the skate park?
Correct.
So you guys are enforcing that?
Yes, we are.
How about scooters?
Scooters are the same.
How about wheelchairs?
This is not an interrogatory. If you want to talk with the chief, you're more than welcome, but we can't have it back and forth.
You can't have it back and forth? Okay. All right.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Christian Catlin, 444 Oasis. I'm going to be speaking on the same bill. I'm here to talk about the harassment from the city towards children at the skate park that was built for them. I was there the day the park was opened, and my family has raised thousands to help bring in its 3 phases, which the city has failed to do so. You've only brought in 1 phase. We have been told for years we cannot use the facility due to liability insurance being too high. Here, I'd like to present this to the council. I have enough for, if we had a full council, I have enough there. This is Assembly Bill 1146, Chapter 221. This bill summarized reads as so. This bill would apply the above provisions and others relating to skateboard safety and liabilities to other wheeled recreation devices. So, enough is enough. Our city has almost no positive recreation for our youth. It is failing them more and more every day. We must stop and act on behalf of the next generation and remove our stipulations. I am ashamed of how the city has acted towards the youth, ashamed at the officers who tell the children to ride on the street where the bicycles are marked instead of the $300,000 skate park that was built for them. I am ashamed at the words "get a petition" that has been used for the last 20 years. How dare we, as the elders of this community, ask for children to come and revamp the park and then kick them out immediately afterwards? If your response to this is you don't have money for it, now you could sell that $5,000 voting system you easily passed last year. I have asked Jason Patton to look into this and have heard nothing back. Now, Peggy, I ask you. You stated on November 5th, let me get back to you by Friday. I would like to explore options too. Thank you. As I know you're saying that this is going to be on the next meeting, but your RMC 4-7-104 is unlawful. This is the same exact response the city has given for 20 years. What must we do to change this? Do we need to plan protests and shut down the skate park completely? I think this will be pushed to bring more and more people with bikes to the park. Every single ticket that this city writes is 2 more parents that are going to be down here saying the same thing. My last closing message is this will not go away. This message will be read at every meeting that this is ignored. If nothing is done, I will be happy to take the tickets at the skate park, along with the other men and women of the community. We will dig into every dollar that was spent, every matching fund dollar, every donation from places like Walmart, and the $10,000 that was donated through Generation X, every public fund dollars that was not used for public. Thank you.
Thank you.
My name is Jody Schultz. I am coming from the I'm coming from the Bakersfield Census Office. I'm a recruiter for Ridgecrest and the surrounding area. And I would like to speak tonight about what I'm here to do as a recruiter. As you know, 2020, we're going to be having our census. And we need to get the information out to your community that this is not something that is going to encroach on their privacy, and that this is something that's been going on since 1790. Every 10 years we have a census so that we can count the population across the whole country. But in particular, we're focusing in on this area here, Kern County, San Bernardino County, and Inyo County. And you're going to see me out and about the community in the next few months, maybe sitting in front of Albertsons, sitting wherever I can, trying to get people to sign up to become enumerators. We have many, many positions coming available for the community to apply for. We've got flexible, well-paying jobs as field managers and census enumerators. And we know that there's people in this community that could that could use some extra income. I've got some pamphlets here. I've been doing this for a couple weeks already, and I've run into a lot of people that don't understand what the census is. And I'm sure that many of you do here, but if you could share your knowledge of what the census is with others, so that when they get their census in the mail in January, they will fill it out and mail it back in. Those that do not respond will be getting a visit, a face-to-face interview with an enumerator sometime in the early spring. And this census is going to help our community. There's over $675 billion that is going to be dispersed throughout the country. And we want to make sure that every single person is counted in our community so that we can get those funds in as we deserve. This money will go towards hospitals, schools, public works, road work, many things that we can use to better our community. But my job in particular is getting the word out, getting people to go online to apply for these jobs. And if I can sign anybody up, if you see my table, if you know anybody that's 18 years older, United States citizen, they are qualified to apply for these jobs. And like I said, there's many, many of them. I've got over 7,000 applications that need to be applied for in the next few weeks. So if you know of anybody, our region goes all the way up to Bridgeport, all the way down to Rosemont, all the way over to Fresno, and all the way to Death Valley. That's our area. And you know how there's a lot of land mass that there is absolutely no people living on, and there's areas where they're very secluded. And so we're reaching everybody, and we need people everywhere. And that's what I'd like to share with you tonight.
Thank you. I'm assuming because no one is coming up after Dave that there's no other public comment?
Good evening. I just wanted to say I had occasion recently to watch the meeting online, and I would just like to make the comment that all the complaints about the sound system are not invalid, because sitting at home, there was some people who were not speaking into the mic that could not be heard. So that's when you're doing a live stream. Now, the last meeting, I guess I missed the first part of it, but there seems to be an effort to rename part of Heritage Drive to, what's his name?
Jim Gregory.
Thank you. That's right off a resounding no, because the city already has procedures for naming streets and parks in place. They were put in place, I think, at least when Ron Carter was still running the quality of life meeting, and somebody wanted to rename one of the parks after Rose Sparga, a very well-known philanthropist in a way that resided here in Ridgecrest for years. And that procedure, as far as I know, is still in existence. Now, I'm not going to have time to go through this entirely as I wanted to, but I've also been trying to get it written into a letter to the editor to actually put it in writing. There are streets in the city that are already named for people. However, I think several of those streets were named by the county before the city actually came into existence. And then also some of the streets have people's names, like the street that I live on, Kevin, and Tricia, and so on and so forth. Those were the options of the developers, and they were on the track maps when they were approved. So the developers have their options when they submit their track maps. There's a couple of others that, as I say, I think were in existence beforehand. Like the one that stands out predominantly, I guess, to most people is Drummond Avenue. Well, Dr. Drummond was here a long time before the city was in existence. And I think that road was already named after him before the city came to being. So that's pretty much it. I'm going to try and find, if I can, some of the policies that were actually put in place. And that's been a long time ago, so at least 20 years, I believe, that Mr. Carter was considering that. And the Parks and Rec notes, I don't know how thorough they are, but they should be in there somewhere too. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
My name is Barbara Bain, and I want to give a shout out to the council for approving the stop sign at South Downs and Bowman. That's a marvelous thing. It's already making a huge difference, and I'm thrilled. I've seen numerous wrecks there in the last few years, people speeding. It's just marvelous that you've taken a really positive step to improve my neighborhood, and I thank you very, very much for that.
Thank you.
I wanted to add in, because I know someone asked me about that stoplight, that the light isn't flashing, and my understanding is the flashing lights are back ordered and they will be installed as soon as they come in. 10 to 15 days. So the downside will also have flashing lights too, because someone asked about that.
Hi there, Scott Miller, City of Ridgecrest, East Wilson. Mr. Pilchin, this probably question is for you, and I'm not even sure you can answer it, but I'm going to ask it anyway. You mentioned that the process to replace the other city council person will be at the next city council meeting. Are you able to explain the process of that? There's a lot of different rumors going around. I could give you all of them, but it'd probably be a shorter process just to have you explain it, how that process will work.
Well, I'm not sure what more I can say to elaborate other than it's either appointment or special election. So that decision hasn't been made. But I'm not sure what else needs to be explained about that.
Okay, let me...
Where is the law? It's in the staff report. It is in the staff report, and it is Government Code
36512.
Thank you very much. Government Code 36512.
Okay. So I could go look, but I can't come back up, so I'm just going to ask the questions because I can't come back because I can only do it once. So when it comes to appointment, will the highest last vote getter be appointed? Is that an opportunity there, or with the last two elections, or will that be brought up during the next council meeting?
Okay, I can respond to that. So I'm not aware of any restriction on the council's ability to appoint. So if anyone in the public thinks that there is such a restriction, Ron and I will be happy to look at that, but I'm just not aware of any limitation on the power to appoint.
Okay. So it's essentially when the meeting takes place, there isn't a protocol in place that we can pretty much decide at that time what protocol we're going to use. Is that what I understand?
First, it will be agendized, so that's why there's no appointment taking place today. And at that meeting, the council will either appoint someone or decide to, first they're going to decide whether to appoint or to hold a special election, and then whichever they decide will be pursued after that.
So one of the rumors that was, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I wanted to ask a question too. It is possible that will need more time to do that, and it may not be decided at that meeting. Okay,
Right.
Just so we make sure that everybody doesn't think that the action may or may not take place, but
No, you're exactly
not
right.
necessarily going to take place at that meeting.
So when it's agendized, will it be an action item that can be put on to the next meeting then? Is that what I'm hearing and understanding?
Do you want to take that? I'm not sure I'm following.
Yeah, I think what staff's potential recommendation may be is that council discuss on the 4th what they plan to do. Hypothetically, if they elect to appoint, staff may recommend, or they could decide whichever way they want to go. They could accept applications and then appoint during the second meeting in January. But it'd be solely up to them. It'd be their decision to make during the 4th meeting. Or they could elect to do a special meeting too, or a special election. It's up to them.
So unfortunately, I have to go back to rumors just to help dispel them, because there's a lot of people listening and watching and things like that. So the opportunity for council not to take action and leave the seat open until 2020, is that an option?
Oh, I'll take that one. Okay, so no, there is a time limit on that, which is, you'll find in that law, which is the city must choose one or the other within 60 days. So that takes us into January.
Okay.
But if the city chooses, because Tehachapi, Tehachapi just went through this like a year ago, and you can go look at their articles. If council can't, if we choose to appoint and we can't reach an agreement, potentially the seat could be left vacant until 2020.
Not according to what Mr. Pitchen just said.
Well, 2020 is in a month, is in 2 months. So yes, the 60 days.
Not November of 2020.
No,
sir.
that's correct.
So you said 60 days.
That's right.
Is that 60 days from today? Or is it 60 days from next month?
I'm not prepared to give a legal opinion on that. So we'll have to.
You have the document in front of you, sir. I don't. So what's the
Right.
document say?
So from the vacancy.
So that would be.
We're right
I'm not an
right
attorney,
around now.
So
let's say.
I'm not an attorney. I don't play one on television. But in my world, that would be from if council sound like they ratified that this evening. So that'd be 60 days from today. They would need to have that position filled. Is that my?
I believe that's the case. Yes.
Fair enough. Very well. Thank you very much.
Of course.
I assume there's no other public comment? Okay. Then we will go to council announcements. Lindsay?
Yes. Just 1 minute. Let me pull it up. Sorry.
Then, do you mind if I go while you're looking
Go
at it?
first.
Okay,
Yes,
I
thank
want
you.
to make sure everybody remembers that the Christmas parade is coming up. It's a great event. It's the 51st annual Christmas parade. It is going to be on the December 14th, and the parade will step off at 9 a.m. Those of you wishing to participate, there are applications at the city, at the chamber, and we would ask at the Elks Lodge, and we would ask that all of you participate. It's a great event. The only restrictions we have is there is one Santa Claus, so if you want to participate, you're not going to participate as a Santa Claus. So that is what I would like to say. Lindsay, are you ready?
Yes.
Okay.
So the Youth Advisory Committee will have a winter festival before the tree lighting ceremony on December 7th, and it will start at 4 p.m. They're going to have crafts and live music, a cake contest, and it's free of charge. They will be accepting donations, though, and that will just be right out front here. So,
Okay. Scott? Nope, no problem. Okay, thank you. Then we will now come to the consent calendar. All items on the consent calendar are considered to be routine the city staff and will be approved in one motion if no member of the council or the public wishes to comment or ask questions. If comment or discussion is desired by anyone, that item will be removed from the consent calendar, will be considered separately with public comment before action is taken. Do any members of the council wish to have any item pulled after I read these? Proposed action to approve draft minutes of the City of Ridgecrest City Council successor redevelopment agency financing authority housing authority regular meeting dated November 6th. Does anybody want to have it pulled? Okay, motion.
I move approval.
Second.
Please vote. Three ayes, one absent with Mr. Mauer. The motion carries.
Okay, discussion and action items. A resolution of the City, Ridgecrest City Council authorizing a one-time bonus and pay for the city employees and the subsequent allocations of necessary funds. Thank you.
Good evening, Mayor Brady and members of council. This is a resolution to utilize a portion of the fiscal year
Can
2019.
you all hear that? Get it a little closer toward you, please.
This is a resolution to utilize a portion of the fiscal year 2019 salary savings for a one-time bonus for city employees. City employees have not received a cost of living wage increase since 2008. For the past few years, the council has approved one-time bonuses as a way to recognize the hard work and dedication of city staff. In fiscal year 19, the city saw some moderate salary savings due to employee turnover. During these times of turnover, a position often remains unfilled during the recruitment process, which accounts for a majority of the savings. The general fund saw a savings of $436,000. This resolution would authorize a one-time payment of $1,500 for all current full-time employees and $750 for all current part-time employees, totaling $163,359.
Can you talk about how that includes the benefits and what is that due to that? It was in our staff report, so we can make that public.
This does include all mandatory Social Security and Medicare costs in that total amount.
Is there any discussion from council? Is there any discussion from the public? No discussion? Motion?
I move approval.
Second.
Please vote. Three ayes, one absent with Mr. Mauer. Motion does carry.
Okay. Item number 2, discussion and provide guidance to the city's representative on the board of the Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Mr. Heeman?
So I don't have any new information to share as far as the ongoing to the GA. I think everybody's aware that the draft GSP is out, and that is the primary discussion that is going on right now. There is a Groundwater Authority meeting tomorrow. This will be a major topic on it. I highly recommend if anyone has an interest and asks questions or wants to see what's currently going on to come to that meeting. And so at this point, what I'd like to do is I'd like to pass to the fellow council members here any questions that they may have pertaining to the GA. And so if anyone has any questions, please bring them up right now.
I know I have several after I looked through some of the GSP, and then as I was looking through the budget and then the proposed fee increase for next year. So what I've noticed is that I recalled way back when we voted on Stetson versus I think it was Parker Engineering, and at that time it was said that the Stetson's bid was $250,000, and then the Parker was $1.2 million for the general manager and the GSP. And so what I started realizing is that Stetson Engineering, when I was looking through it, they've spent on the order of $2 million so far. And so that concerns me because now we're talking about raising the fees from $30 up to, they analyzed 75 or 90. And so I just like to hope that there will be conversations on trying to manage to the budget more. Because, and then as I was going through the budget, on the pro formas, the 2020 total on one would say 1.2 million on the $75 pro forma and the $90 pro forma, but on the 2020 proposed budget administration sheet, it says that their expenses will be 2.4 million. So I want to make sure, because on the pro formas, on the $75 one, it says there'll be $200,000 left over, and on the $90 acre fee, it said $434,000. But if the budget is actually 2.4 million, we would obviously then be short by $1 million or 800,000. So some clarification on that would be good. I also had concerns over, there was, for 2020, it says that there's no legal support assumed for any challenges to the GSP, and minimal support by Stetson. And I just, is that wise on our part? Because from reading the GSP, it seems like there's concerns over whether the farmers have really been consulted. So because the letters I've seen, the farmers have said, we know we can't keep doing what we're doing, and we're willing to meet with you. And so I'd like to know, have there been meetings? If there have been meetings with the farmers, are there any notes on that? Because I think that would be good to see. And then also, Searles Valley, in the GSP, it seems like Searles Valley isn't going to be taken care of. And that concerns me because we have potentially 500 households here in our community that rely on Searles Valley for employment. And if those were to become vacant, that would really harm our economy here. So I think making sure that we take care of Searles Valley and the farmers so that we can prevent litigation is pretty important. And I also had concerns about it seems a lot of the GSP was written behind closed doors and in closed session. And I was curious as to why that was done, because if we would have allowed for more engagement throughout the process, could that also have helped? Because I've seen a number of people say that they've been making comments on the GSP, and the time frame for those comments to actually be incorporated from when the GSP was released, they only had a week, I think, to submit their comments to actually be incorporated into the report. Any comments after that, my understanding, they would just be attached. And so I just think that those would be some good things to take to the GSA to have a discussion about, because I'm concerned about legal challenges. I think I've read, that there's quotes of like Mr. Gleason saying that we need to build a war chest, and I would prefer us not to be proceeding down that path. So.
And now, can you get me a copy of these questions?
Yes.
So that I can present that to the board, and I'll make it available to them. And then what I'd like to do is get as much of it answered as fully as I can, and then on our next council meeting, we will present those questions and answers. And so time is of the essence here, so I would need them tonight or
Yeah.
first thing in the morning.
Okay.
But so if, all right, Peggy or Madam Mayor, do you have any?
I wanted to just make sure when the issue of the 1% growth that the water district said that they were going to need, that was not 1% growth overall, but is 1% a year. And it isn't that you can't go 300 this year and then you have to drop to 75 and next year is 750. And over 20 years, you have a 20% growth over that. And I wanted to make sure that was well understood.
Exactly. I think that's a really important one because quite a few people in the community have voiced their concern about the 1% growth. And so my understanding, and that's speaking from myself as a councilman here, is that the 1% isn't a 1% per year finite growth. That anyone that has lived in the valley here for decades and have been through the federal recessions have seen the up and downs of our community. And so the 1% growth is an average of growth over a long period of time. So if we have periods of upswing in our federal economy and the base is doing good hiring and we are increasing growth, we have that availability of growth. There will be years that it's maybe less than that. So, but I think it would be good for the city's standing to have that put out in a vocal or in writing, I should say, from the GA that makes that a solid assessment of it and not just hearsay or talk. And so, but I think we can add that to the questions that Councilmember Stephen is putting forth, and we'll get the answers to that.
The second thing I would like to make sure that we understand, when it talked about how much is it going to cost the ratepayers of the Indian Wells Valley Water District, depending on what it was, and we heard numbers, individuals, that it may be as little as $15 to $20 a month, it may be less, it may be more, but in the beginning, it was clear that there isn't going to be this $1,000 in the beginning until we know what the grants are, what the programs are, because there was so many grants available that we could, some of them are not all one time, some are long term. And I wanted us to see if we could get a better definition of how much it may cost the ratepayers and in turn our citizens of the city of Ridgecrest.
More of an accurate,
yeah.
what's
and we
it
know
going to
we
boil
can't
down
do
to?
That right yet.
Is that in regards to the pumping fees that Councilman
Right.
Stevens had brought up,
Yeah.
that raising that from the $30 to the $70? I've heard numbers, thrown around that it's a couple dollars with
Exactly,
the pumping fee that's raised from 30 to 70. So the effects, although any effect, and that's for me speaking on my own personal basis here again as a council member for the city of Ridgecrest, the ratepayers are a big concern. We don't want to see. Water is water. It's like air. It's water. We have things that we need, and the fees shouldn't be exorbitant. They should be affordable. They should be, just what we need to supply water to the residents. And so there will be a small increase, but there is talk, thrown out there that it's going to be exorbitant amounts. But for the fee to go from $30 to $70 on a pumping fee, don't quote me on this, but what I have heard is that it could be as minimal as a couple dollars increase in a down to the ratepayer themselves, to the consumer. So when it comes to imported water, again, I think a lot of numbers get thrown out there. If it's $170 some odd $1 million for hooking up to AVAC and how much that water is going to trickle down to the price per acre foot, those numbers are exorbitant. I don't see that coming on down to the ratepayers. I mean, this is information that we gleaned from Capitol Corps to look at what are the options, what's the feasibility of imported water. Is it possible? Can we do it? What's the avenues of it? And so that's really where that stands right now. And so whether the GSP is adopted or not under its current standard or state, those things aren't going to be implemented the day the GSP's accepted. So I think people can rest assured that we're not going to see that coming down to the ratepayer. And so,
Did you have anything else you wanted to say before we open it to the public?
I don't think so. I think that's probably the biggest thing, two of the issues. The questions that we have, I think, are very pertinent to the city, and as we move, things are going to be moving pretty fast here in the next month or so. So I think it's good for us to discuss it, keep it in discussion, and from the perspective of the city and keeping our constituents in this, within the city. And actually, it's more than the city. It is a aquifer. It's a basin. It includes the county in Searles Valley. So when we speak about it, it involves everyone within this water basin. So we have to kind of look at that as a whole, because some of these other areas directly affect us. The county affects us directly. Ridgecrest is a city for this valley, and so anything that's going on is going to affect the county. It's going to affect the city. If it affects Searles Valley, it's going to affect the city. So I think it's important that we stay in the forefront of what's in the best interest of the city and the citizens of this valley.
All right, let's open to public comment. Please, if you're planning to speak, please come up now at this point in time and follow Mike.
Okay, what you're looking at is what I've already passed out at two other meetings around town here, and I'll just repeat what I said before. The first page is just for you to get the total overall picture. It's got all the water users on that table, and on the right side, it's basically saying here are the people who are going to have to use imported water, and that's the water district users and Searles Valley. So that's augmented / that means imported water. What that means to water district users, the Searles Valley itself, is right in the back in the pocketbook. Lots of money they're going to get stuck with. Second page is what's on the GSP plan, section 6, page 6. All of the options, all the costs, in numerous cases, there's option 1, 2, 1A, 1, 2, 3, a couple of options. So, and then they have total annual costs for each one of those also, and also for each the high and low cost option, and so forth. So I thought instead of guessing, I'll just line this out. So the last page is really the page of interest here, and that's the printout of a spreadsheet. And I've got copies of this on the table if anybody who's interested to take it home and kind of look at it. Basically, all I did was take all those costs, the high cost option, the low cost option, and amortize out the stuff that had capital cost over 30 years at only a 2% interest rate, which I'd be surprised if we got that on that. And calculated that out, and then calculated out what they're saying on the first sheet, which is around 2,000 acre feet of imported water, and that's, water district users are going to have to pay for that. They'll be lucky to get off at $2,000 an acre foot. So the bottom line is on the bottom in bold print. The cost, it says the lowest, and this is annual cost per household, estimating 12,000 households in the water district. The lowest per household cost of all this, assuming all this is implemented, $1,300+ a year. And it could go as high as $2,200 per year. I think all anybody could ever actually respond to that is that this is jaw-dropping. It's going to be a back-breaking economy hit to most households in this valley. It's going to be an overall hit to the economy of the valley in all kinds of different terms. And I don't think you're going to find one happy camper in this city if that is to fall down on their heads money-wise. Going to be a lot of unhappy people, but by the time that were to happen, they would be like, well, so what? We can't do anything about it. Now, I appreciate the comments about, well, we don't think it's going to happen. We think we're going to get state funding. let me just cut to the chase on the state funding part of that. The state constitution, Article 13B, Section 6 says that unfunded mandates are to be paid for by the state government. So, unfortunately, what usually happens, almost always happens in cases like this, is that's not pushed, it's not fought for. The cost is passed on down to the common citizen, and the common citizen gets to shell out and pay now even a lot more money for the quote-unquote privilege of living in California. I'm telling people that are on this agency, I'll be telling them tomorrow, you need to try to get your attorneys to educate themselves about this section of the state constitution and figure out what they're going to do in response to these ridiculous, exorbitant costs that are on this list, and tell them, get busy, and tell the state, we don't have the money. You know our people don't have the money. It's your law. Your constitution says you pay for it. So here's the plan. Give us the money and we'll get busy. Otherwise, we can't do anything about it. Sorry, it's your cost, not ours directly. If that doesn't happen, like I said, then it's going to be not good news for everybody that lives in this valley overall, from all kinds of ways of the hit of this, from people being forced to leave because they can't afford to stay here anymore, just because they can't afford the cost of just having water to drink and bathe and cook with. And there are a lot of people here that can't afford that much extra cost per year, and you all know that. They all leave, all kinds of houses get vacated. You better be prepared for your property values to go down to the floor, because that's the inevitable result, businesses going out and everything else. So this is not just a paper exercise. This is not just, here's how we're going to go about it, and golly gee, it's just going to be a few bucks. It's not a few bucks, Mr. Heyman. The last time I looked at my pumping fee on my water bill, it was over $3. If they triple it, it's going to be $9. It's not a couple of bucks, okay? It's not a lot, but we're only talking about pennies compared to what is in this plan, what that's going to cost everybody. And that's a problem, and it needs to be addressed directly with the state and with some strong backbone.
Thank you, sir. If anyone wants to speak after this, please come up now. Thank you.
Dave Matthews again. Ed, I commend Mr. Deal for his analysis there. He's got more time to look into that stuff than I do. But I wanted to, whatever we do with a plan for this fiasco, I wanted to include a statement or a note or something that one of our local representatives has said over and over again, and I agree with him, and that is the state of California doesn't have a water problem, they have a water distribution problem. And it's not just the last year or 2 years or whatever we've had this drought, so-called. It's been coming up for decades. I've been watching it over there in the Central Valley. They have not done any major water projects for well over 2 decades, probably even more than that. And the state water agency needs to get into gear and do what it's supposed to do. The other thing is that they can do desalination. Well, now people are going to say, wait a minute, the desalination has been tried here and there. Well, there's different methods of desalination, and there's some, as far as I can tell, some methods that have not been tried. So we need to get on look at that, and I'm sure any desalination methods could well be studied if people went to Israel, because I think they have been doing that for years. When I retired 2 decades ago or so, and I finally got some computer power and internet access, I kind of became an amateur meteorologist. And one of the things that I have done over the years is watch the national precipitation maps. They're there, you can find them, the Weather Services put them out. And just in the recent months, not 6 months, but the last 2 or 3 months, I have watched this country get several heavy, decent snowfalls across the northern states. And within a couple of months, a lot of it has disappeared. And where did it go? Well, some of it that fell in Colorado probably went down to the Gulf of to the Gulf of Baja via the Colorado River. But the majority of it probably went down on the Mississippi to the city of New Orleans and the Gulf of Mexico. Now, some of that water could have been saved by a network of dams and so on and so forth, and redistributed across the whole country. Now, that's not solving our problem immediately, but it is something that could have been in the works for over 50 years. I mean, we've got an interstate highway system that everybody uses. That didn't come up overnight. That took many years, many, many years. But we could do the same with water. So I just want that note to be in the project, our plan here somewhere, that there are other ways to get water than what we are actually looking at. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave. It's really nice to hear someone talk about an actual solution.
You want me to pass it down? Okay.
Can you, her timer already started, did you? No.
I think I'm going to be long-winded, huh? I'm Carol Vaughn. I'm here tonight as the president-elect of the Ridgecrest Association of Realtors. I've just handed you a letter that was written to the GA expressing some of our concerns with some of the information that has come out about the GA proposals. The first one is the growth rate, 1%. It's hard for me to believe that the city of Ridgecrest would not be extremely concerned about such a statement. We have a military base that is our one major employer, and to talk about limiting growth is possibly devastating to both them and to us. The financial impact of the plan, as I think Mr. Neal just kind of went through, is so unclear, and there's so much uncertainty to it that it just is almost impossible to comprehend that someone would think that that type of rhetoric is a plan. We have no numbers. We have people saying we're going to get grants. I hope, it's nice that we might get grants. But this is real people's lives. We need more really, truly accurate information to come by. We can't deal with what ifs. We can't deal with Maybe we'll get a grant. Maybe it will cost this much money. Maybe we'll import water. Maybe we'll limit growth. Maybe we'll buy out the farmers. Maybe we'll just take the farmers' land. We need to know what's really going on. This has been in process for over 3 years. We should have more detail than this. We're also concerned about some of the information that appears to be science that could have been utilized to determine more about what our real water situation is, how much aquifer do we actually have, how much water's there, how much is brackish, are we going to run out next week, or 100 years from now, or 500 years from now? Do we need to desalinate water? What do we need to do? We need some really much, much more clarity for this. It's frightening, and I think Ms. Stevens pointed out Trona. I am horrified when I hear someone in a position of authority say, let's shut the water off to Trona. Trona is vital, absolutely vital to Ridgecrest's economy. One time in years past, and I can't even remember which decade it was, they lost 500 jobs. It absolutely devastated Ridgecrest for at least 3 years, and if I'm not mistaken, it was probably during the 80s, which was basically a boomtown for Ridgecrest. We cannot afford to lose jobs in Trona. We need to do everything we possibly can to support them. 500 people moving out of the city of Ridgecrest would be the same as 500 jobs being lost on the base. That is not something that is acceptable to the city of Ridgecrest, not now, not ever. We need to look for sustainable growth. We need good, solid jobs. We need people to know that our community is going to be here. We've been being asked for the last several years to help provide housing for new young engineers. We need stability in the community in order to accommodate that. So we need you to help us work with the GA to get more details and more actual facts so we know what we're dealing with. And we need a solution that is a real solution. We can't keep putting Band-Aids on top of a problem that's been going on for 50 years. We need some real answers and some real solutions. And in this proposal, there's so many what-ifs that it's frightening. And what I'm really concerned about is that we'll end up kicking the can down the road again another 30 years with no real solution to what needs to be solved. So I think as our representatives, we need to ask you to take a serious, hard look at this. Thank you.
Thank you, Carol.
Good evening. My name's Elaine Mead. At the combined PAC and TAC meeting last week or 2 weeks ago, I did address the question of the growth factor to Stetson Engineering. I asked them to please explain it because it was not spelled out in the plan itself in the text. The only mention of it was in the modeling scenarios. The explanation that Jeff Helsley gave was they used a 1% of the water district's use, not the total pumping for the valley. So the water district uses 6,500 acre feet or thereabouts, so that would be 1% of that. So you're talking 65 acre feet that you could grow in a year. And I do understand that it isn't a hard and fast 1% a year, but it should average out at that. So that may or may not help with the explanation of the 1% growth. The other thing I would like to address, and that's the numbers. I understand that people look at trying to find the smallest number to throw out, or they look at the largest. This is November, so in either September or October, the chairperson for the GA said that he saw the imported water being between $1,000 and $3,000 per acre foot as the cost to be passed on. And that was only a portion of the cost. That didn't include all the costs that would be related to that particular augmentation. So $1,000 an acre foot, that's what, $500 per half acre, which is about what a normal family would use in a year. So I would say somewhere between $500 and $1,500 is what it would hit the general public in the pocketbook. Thank you very much.
Elaine, I'd like to have you clarify that 1%. So when you spoke with them, are you referring that their comment back was 1% of the water availability in growth or 1% of population growth?
No, it's 1% of the water, which...
And that's very unclear, you know, as to what we're discussing here. And it's a very common question that's been brought up by several different people on this 1%. And that's why I voiced earlier that I think we need to have that in writing in a clear format, differentiating between, are we talking water, are we talking 1%, a variable 1%, I think is an important aspect of it.
Right.
Meaning we may have a bumper year to have 2 or 3% growth that year, but is it population growth of the city, or are we talking just water?
No, it's very specific.
So,
it's as far as the GA is concerned. Now, how that would translate to the city for people growth may be totally different. I don't know what that conversion would be, but the 1% growth that's being talked about in connection with the GA is in water. So it's 1% of what the water district is pumping.
And back to the realtor board, in your list of questions, that 1% is more geared toward the population growth and overall growth of the city. It was a question. What percentage? Right. No, I'm just clarifying it. So when we get answers, we want it to be a lot more solid in its explanation. I'm sorry? You're saying any percent listed like that is not very viable. Not if you want a viable plan. But what my question to you is, you're referring to population growth and overall growth of the city, because like she was saying, that the way it's depicted is it makes a big difference. So
I think so.
We would ask the public to only speak at the podium during their public comment period. Thank you.
That's clear enough.
So I think what she was just trying to say is that having a growth percentage listed, whatever it be, the realtors see that as not good for the community, like trying to limit a growth percentage.
Right.
Just to clarify, that was why I asked Stetson Engineering to clarify it, because they had used it in this scenario 6.1 and 6.2, but they didn't put it in the plan. And so I was trying to find out, was it in the plan and I missed it, or was it just the scenario? And he said that it was 1% of the water district use. It's not population growth, it's water for growth. And that you have to kind of look at the overall picture to see the growth.
Elaine, may I add that when I heard Jeff Helmsley talking about that, he added that the 1%, the water district said they thought the 1% was a fair and accurate way to quantify the ability of them to maintain the water usage without having to import immediately. And so when I recall, they talked about, was that a population base or was that the 1%? And they said it was a 1% of water. But the fact that they pointed out that that was only there as a potential to look for how do we fund that. It didn't mean that we're putting a limit that you can't grow more than that or use more water than that 1% growth of what they're already doing. And I remember Stetson even saying that. Do you recall that? Mm-hmm. So it wasn't that we're limiting it. That was how to plan.
Right, but if you don't have the water for it and you haven't planned for it, then it's not there. How are you going to supply more
And that's what
households?
they said. That was why the imported water and the conservation and the brackish water, there was a whole lot of discussion, but not in the plan, of brackish water and how that can help take care of Searles Valley minerals. Trona will still, am I saying too much?
No.
Trona will still get their potable water from the Indian Wells Valley, and the potential for treatment of brackish water as well as desal, same thing, desal from desal plants off submarines. And this was a golden opportunity for us to look at. We have so much saline water in this valley that we can use that water. Does it change the sustainability issue? No, it's still water that's here.
Yeah.
Am I incorrect? Did you understand that differently?
No, I understood it as it was to show that the district was planning for some growth. Yeah. That was what the 1% was about.
But not limiting growth.
Well,
to 1%.
It's only limited if you don't have the supply.
Well,
then,
but that's,
yeah.
Those other options will, I'm sorry, I don't want to. The other options will augment those supplies.
Right, and I think that's the concern, is the interpretation of that 1%. It's leaving people worried, so I think it would be nice to have it clear to.
It should be even more clear than it was.
Yes, I agree.
Thank you.
Donna Hawker, Association of Realtors Office. So just to clarify that what we meant by listing in our letter was 1% of what? Then we listed some programs in there that potentially affect the 1% growth. And we didn't even list, new hires at the hospital, new teachers, new workers for the school district. I mean, there's a gamut of employment opportunities that we feel is coming our way in the next near future. So that was the intent of that question, Councilmember Heyman, on the 1%. Mm-hmm. So it is a little confusing.
No,
I hope that clarifies what we meant in our letter. Okay, great. Thank you.
We'll definitely try to get that addressed. And
great.
There's going to be a whole lot of stuff coming down the pike here pertaining to Searles Valley minerals, and which is a big concern for the city. And I concur with the mayor and with Lindsay Stevens that these are all big factors. And so, but there will be a lot of questions. I think some of what were asked tonight that may be answered in the next meeting or two, because things are coming down the pike pretty fast. So, but we'll try to get those questions answered. And I really hope that people continue to bring these questions up, and we'll make it a little more of a discussion forum if the council's okay with it. But some of it too, though, I think attend the meetings, because some of these questions can be answered and heard at the GA meetings, and good time to bring it up there too. This is just the city council. We're one member of the 5 directors on that board. So yes, we have a voice, but the more you're heard on the other end of it too, the better. So,
okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
No other public comment? Okay, you've received direction? Any other comments?
That I have.
Okay. All right, the next item. Okay. Discuss and provide direction on lighting and landscape districts. Sir.
Madam Mayor, members of council. We had a meeting of the Infrastructure Committee a couple of weeks ago, and during that meeting, it was discussed that there needed to be a broader discussion beyond what was happening at the Infrastructure Committee at the council level. So what I've brought tonight is a little bit of information, what the questions were, and then I would love to open it up to discussion after that. So,
None of these are working, so we're all going to
okay,
turn
that's
our
fine.
back to you. And
I won't take offense if you're
Okay.
ignoring me. All right. So, one of the questions people might ask is why is there a lighting and landscape district? If you take a look at these at the parts highlighted in blue, this is the city's municipal code. A subdivider shall provide for a maintenance district to cover the cost of operating and maintaining all street lighting. And then down below, subdividers shall agree to have the city establish a maintenance district to cover the cost of maintaining the required landscaping. So this is actually a part of the city's municipal code. So one of the items that came up concern was the size of development where a lighting and landscape district should be required. So one street light, okay, the planning waived Dr. Mallory's one light. That's the one example we have of one light district. 2 lights. The Mathers track has 2 lights, and staff and Wildan are both recommending waiving that. More than 2 lights, where should a district be established? So again, the need for district is the cost to cover the street lights that comes out of the city's dwindling gas tax revenues. Current estimate for this fiscal year is $235,000 for street lights throughout the city. So another thought would be to have a citywide lighting district. Everyone pays for the benefit they receive, not just the homeowners where the districts are. Groups with no streetlights would need to create an entire district to be added because everybody in town would be in the district. If it's an undeveloped piece of property, it'd be a different price. If it's a developed property, it would be the same price. But landscaping will need to be kept separate. That's because I don't see how you could say the landscaping is a citywide benefit for where there is small landscapings. Another item concerned was the operations cost. If you take a look at the right-hand column, was $1,007. Top right-hand side, $560 for streetlights, $447 for maintenance of the landscaping. The annual administration cost is $1,580. The administration expense exceeds the cost to maintain the property. The citywide lighting district might take care of some of this problem as well. Landscaping. Where are we headed in the future for required landscaping, both at the residential and commercial levels? With water restrictions, what does the city want or need? We currently have designated scenic corridors in the general plan. I don't know that with all the things we just discussed, I'm sorry, I've been leaning away from the mic, with all the things we've just discussed, that this is a personal opinion, that this is viable anymore. We need to talk about changes that need to be made. And what do we want and need with future commercial development? We need to come to some kind of a decision fairly soon because the ACES development is coming up quickly. So what we're asking today is direction. Do you need more information? Do we need to make a change to the municipal code? Or is there something else that council would like us to look at or proceed with? Like I said, we have a couple of suggestions that 2 and under is certainly 2 street lights and under is not a viable lighting and landscaping district addition. But we don't know where to draw the line beyond that. Landscaping, we would suggest that with the water restrictions just discussed, that we need to make a decision quickly to decide what we want to do with that. And are we going to restrict what developers can put in? If Oasis wants to put in a beautiful front to the development, are we going to tell them no? If right now we have a requirement for landscaping and we're kind of have, without your say-so, have kind of told developers, well, we'll go with DG for right now, because we don't want them to put in irrigation and spend more water on plants. And then, so those are our main ones, okay? What do you want to do with lighting and landscape? And also, where the administration costs are more than the actual cost to maintain the district, what do we need to do? The administration cost, is a cost for both our staff and for Wildan to put the yearly item together that goes into the county that allows us to charge against the property taxes. So that's my information to you. And like I said, we kind of need direction back on 3 different areas, and I'll just name them one more time. What do we want to do with how many lights before we have a viable district? What do we want to do with the administration costs? And then what do we want to do about the landscaping in the future?
How do you determine viability?
Well, we looked at, again, cost versus benefit. It was going to cost a whole lot for a cost the same amount, somewhere between $3,000 and $7,000 to put one of these districts together. For 1 light or 2 lights, it seemed more than excessive. Okay, with 3 lights, it's starting to push okay at this point in time. But again, that's just our opinion, and that's why we're looking for council's thoughts on it.
I also had prepared some information to talk about this because I was part of the infrastructure committee discussion. So I wanted to talk about from when we went through the reports, we spent quite a lot of time going through the reports. And so this is from the most recent one that we just approved, which is IWV's tract over there on Drummond by Tamarisk. So for that district, and I'm just going to talk about the maximum column. So as Barb mentioned, the total lighting cost was estimated to be $1,100 and $1,120. This was estimated before we just adopted the policy to go to LED lights. So likely that will be reduced some, but we don't know for sure how much. One issue I saw, and I brought this up when we discussed the district, is that we are collecting money for landscaping, but the development has no plants or trees. It only has rock and DG and boulders. So that was a concern of mine. But our engineer told us he had to put these numbers in to make the dollars calc out. So there's also a lighting rehabilitation and renovation fund. My issue with that is when the lights are they are signed over to SCE and they are maintained by SCE. So there's no cost to us there. As Bard mentioned, I saw a big problem with the administrative costs of $1,643 being higher than the cost of the actual lighting bill. And then in the end, the total amount that will be collected from these 46 households is $6,840, which is actually over 6 times the cost of the actual lighting. So to me, that was a concern.
Can you go back before you switch, please?
Okay.
Now, first of all, the item on the left-hand side is not what's going to be charged. It's what can be charged. And as explained during the infrastructure meeting, the item on the left-hand side, I'm trying to find where it is. Hang on a minute. Down at the very next to the bottom where it says 152 and 151. The left-hand column must be larger than the right-hand column. Otherwise, the right-hand column must be reduced. The right-hand column, I think we're in agreement, other than over administration, is what the actual cost of things are. If it had not been done the way it is, the cost for all empty lots would have been the same cost as all developed lots. And that's what we explained. That's why the left-hand column is out of balance, because the empty lots should not have to pay the same amount. So that's why we did this. Now, I agree that the cost of the lights is too high on the left side. Every number on the left side is made to make it add up to more than $151 in the left-hand column per EBU, which is how much each. What's the right way to explain it? You have so many EBUs in an area, so overall there'll be 45 or 46, I don't remember which it is, but right now there's only going to be 19.03, and the reason there's a 0.03 is because there's a calculation on all the old empty lots. So the left-hand column is not something we should be discussing, because it's not what it costs the people. What costs the people is on the right-hand column. All right? The total is $2,873, which is what it's going to cost the developer for the first year. It's not $6,800. That's what it could cost when everything's developed, and that will be charged to the homeowners. But it'll never be what's in the left-hand column. It'll always be what's in the right-hand column. The left-hand column, again, is what we can charge, not what we do charge. Now, right now, they're fairly close. They're 151 and 152 per EBU for what we can and what we do. But the overall, the left-hand column is based on the fact that eventually there's going to be 45 pieces of property. Right now, there's only, I think there's 3 less. So there's 16 being developed right now, give or 18? I'm sorry.
It says 19 is how many?
Well, no, I know what it says, but that's because 3 of the undeveloped pieces of property are multiplied by a smaller amount and then added in. I think it's 16-ish. Okay, I mean, we could look back at Mr. Rowland here. What is it right now?
16.
16, that's what I thought. Okay. So that's the reason there's differences. I'm saying absolutely that if you look at the right-hand column, the things we talked about, the administrative costs being $1,560 versus $1,643, they're both higher than the $1,007.
That's why.
Okay.
Well,
which is
the lighting cost. So if you want to talk about, so here's my thing. The maximum assessment budget has been charged in some of the districts. So to say that will never be charged isn't completely true. The right-hand column could change every year based on how much is developed. And if you want to talk about the right-hand column, the lighting cost proposed for next year for the right-hand column, sorry, it's really hard to see, is $580. But what will be paid is $2,873. So even so, you're still looking at, you're charging significantly more to either if the home sells to the homeowner or to the developer than what the actual lighting cost is.
Well, but it's just not, hang on, it's not just the lighting. I'm sorry to interrupt. It's not just the lighting cost. There will be a landscape maintenance cost because the DG will be done on the first part that was done. There's also going to be money put away to do renovations of items. There's also a cost of $260 and 46. I'm sorry. Go
can
ahead.
I go to the next
Sure.
part
Hang
before
on.
you
Let
argue?
me ask a real quick
through it,
question,
too?
just for clarity. So that administrative cost of $1,643 or $1,580, who sees that money?
Some of it comes to the city, and some of it goes to Wildan.
How much goes to Wildan?
I can't tell you off the
Majority
top
of
of my
it
head.
goes to
We don't
Wilden.
know?
Well, I can look. I just don't have it. in
See, I
front of
think
me.
that's part of the problem is, and that is a repetitive fee every year.
Yes.
So that's a yearly annual
It's a yearly
fee that's
fee.
going out that doesn't pertain to fixing a light.
Nope.
Okay, in a catastrophic event, so we have maintenance on lights. So in a catastrophic event, car
Right
hits
now,
it,
if the light goes bad,
car hits
they
it,
take care
knocks
of
it down.
No,
SCE pays for that.
SCE pays for it, but an
It does.
insurance policy probably
Absolutely.
pays for that. So under only under limited circumstances, we have, repairs, that kind of thing. So, but the part I have concern with is that the administrative fee is an annual fee that keeps going and going as long as we have Wildan overseeing something that
Okay.
she just brought point to the SCE takes over the maintenance of, correct?
Now, first of all, Wildan's not overseeing the lighting and landscape district. The city oversees the lighting
Well,
and
what are we
landscape
paying them
district.
for?
We're paying them to put together the yearly report and to put together the
But
original.
it's the same every year, isn't it? I mean, once it's done, why are we paying 50? I guess I'm trying to understand
Because it has to
this.
be renewed and analyzed every year.
It does.
And so they
At
have
the
to
tune
have
of
the engineer
$1,500.
report every year, and every single district pays that amount.
See, that part doesn't compute
But
to the
I want
budget.
to go to the next
Okay, go ahead.
slide really fast, and then we can come back. So, I got this information from IDVB Construction because I wanted to look at the same district that we just approved the lighting district for. So, what this shows is the financial data for home construction in that area. So there's 46 homes in the development. The home cost is going to be about $380,000 is what they will sell for. And so he provided me with showing how much he pays his subcontractors for a single home versus then, multiply that by 46. And then materials and taxable goods. So those are things, the construction materials that he's purchasing that would be taxed, and it would be tax revenue. He also pays people the internal payroll, and then permit fees to the city for a single home is $380,000 is about $23,000. I rounded this because it's down to 252 or something, so I just rounded it to 23,000. But if you look at the breakout of those permit fees, what those go to are primarily impact funds. And so you can see from that $23,000 for a single home, that breaks out into $8,700 for school, $2,200 to a traffic impact fund, $3,500 for sewer, $950 for parks, $1,200 for police. Fire is $740, and drainage is $2,100. Now that's just for a single home. If you look at the total development amount for traffic, you're gaining over $100,000 in traffic. So what was brought up at the infrastructure meeting was that the gas tax revenue was being hit for the lighting bill, and that needs to be used for roads, which I agree with. But if you look at yearly property tax to the city, a single home will bring $220 because property tax is 1%, and we get 5.8% of the 1%. So that's where the $220 comes from. If the whole development is built, that's $10,000. So if the lighting bill is only $1,100, you still even have $9,000 of yearly property tax left over. But if you look at all of the permit fees, the city benefits greatly from these kinds of developments coming in. And so I think what we need to be looking at is these seem to be, we've had a lot of discussions over this being an issue for the community. We had the Warrens. It's been debated over a lot in the Planning Commission over if we drop it for Mallory's. Now they're saying the Mathers, it doesn't pencil out. I think they're starting to crack down on it more. But I think when you look at the benefit of these kinds of developments to the city, the lighting and landscaping districts, they cause a lot of extra work and argument, and sometimes kind of deter some of these developments from happening. And so I think we really need to consider on the smaller infill developments, and this one has 13 lights. I think that's important to note. So even with 13 lights, it still not calculating out to be, the administrative costs are still higher than the actual lighting costs for 13 lights. So I think it doesn't make good sense it doesn't look like we're being very responsible. If we're charging thousands of dollars more than what the actual lighting bill is just to be able to collect it. I don't think that's good for the homeowners moving into those homes, and I don't think it's good for encouraging development either.
Can we have staff explain how we got to that level, and why is it not balancing? And I'm using the word balancing because it does sound like to me that we are collecting more than we need. Is that correct, or am I incorrect?
Well, now, first of all, I'm not exactly sure what numbers you're talking about, and I apologize for that. But so do you need to go back one slide so that or is it this slide that you're talking about? I don't know which numbers were.
Well, I was listening to what Lindsay said.
Yeah.
And to me, if I look at what if I look at what she says, it sounds like to me we are collecting more than we need to spend. Is that money that we are collecting more used for something that hasn't been identified here?
Well, we have to collect more because for the administrative costs of writing the engineering report. But then he could not really give. What Bard was saying is this. Remember when we had that really long meeting when we approved this lighting district, and they kept saying the left-hand column has to be higher than the right-hand column. So he had to leave in all of those landscaping things to make the left-hand column be higher than the right-hand column. So even though the development doesn't have any landscaping, they still had to put the numbers in there to make sure that the left-hand column was more.
But they didn't charge that.
In the right-hand column, they are charging, for landscape, it says they're charging $447 for landscaping in next year. But at any point in time, this is reviewed every year, and depending on who's on city council, at any time, it could go up to the maximum assessment amount. And some of our districts...
Arbitrarily, without any discussion? Without any justification,
If the city council votes to collect the maximum assessment, it would happen. And they couldn't argue against it. And some districts do collect the maximum assessment.
I'm not arguing that some districts do. What I am going to say is that you can't charge more in the left-hand column than you can justify the costs of. All right? So the 564, 47, et cetera. Now, again, if the left side wants to balance and be what the numbers are, then the developers for the vacant land will pay exactly as the developed land pays, which staff would love to have direction one way or the other, but we don't think, and this is why we've done it this way, that undeveloped property should pay the same as developed property, because
that sounds logical to me.
That makes sense. I'm not arguing that logic. But what I'm arguing is that I don't think that even on a 46 development home with 13 lights, that this pencils out. That's my point. Is
13 lights comes out to $22.40-ish for the electric costs, okay?
Of the 46.
I'm sorry?
Of the 46? Or of only the developed?
All 46 lots.
Okay. Is it 13 lights? I'm sorry, was there 13 lights?
Yeah, that's what I remember. So, but 13 lights come out to $22.40. I'm sorry?
He's 10 lights.
I'm sorry. I heard, maybe the other one's 13 then?
Yeah, Madam Mayor, as you remember, when we had that long conversation, we came to the end of it, staff had stated that next year, prior to bringing these landscape and lighting reports back to council for approval, we'd bring them to infrastructure for review. We would also do an assessment of what was in the impound account, what was spent, what was left over. So if we do have a surplus amount that's resting in that count, we could actually go to zero for the next year until such time as we got equilibrium. One of the reasons why we're here is just because of this, because we should have had a landscaping lighting district citywide. And then every time, because every parcel would then be in the district, whether it would be charged 2-3 cents a year because it had no benefit. But when it was developed, it'd already be in the district, and it would just fold in, and it'd create an equal amount that would balance. We'd only be doing one report a year. So I think what Bard was saying was it is frustrating for staff because we are in the position, this was implemented prior to us, and I'm not blame, but we are backing our way into this thing, and it is expensive for those who are engaged in it. I believe that staff at one point in time, when they started looking at that, a significant amount of development that was going to occur because of the BRAC, I think the city was concerned that these landscaping lighting costs that are on the back of the gas tax fund would continue to be burdened. And so the easy decision was made, we'll just put it on the new development. They have to enter the district. These were larger developers at the time. And so there really wasn't much complaint because everybody that's out of town developers is building larger developments. This is just customary everywhere. So my recommendation is we need to do one of two things. We either need to go to the community, say, let's just establish a larger citywide district, see if the community will bite off on it. Otherwise, we're either going to have to restrict those that go into the district so it makes sense so we're not having significant costs just for onesie-twosie developers. As this grows, let's say we grow by 25%. I know we've been talking water earlier, but let's say we find imported water and we can grow, by 40,000 people. Well, at that point in time, we're going to have enough homes as it grows, the administrative costs gets less proportionally. So in the meantime, we need to do something. We either looking for direction from council to try a landscaping lighting district citywide, which will solve this problem completely, or we restrict those tracks, tentative track maps or final maps that get approved. If there's 2 or less, we just exempt them from that based upon an ordinance change, or we go another direction and we just eliminate them. Now that might have some expense because we do have landscaping that's included, which if we took over, we'd have to pay for or remove. And now we're removing, property, we're moving plants and stuff on College Heights Boulevard. So I think staff is looking, and I understand Ms. Stevens' frustration because I think we all are frustrated with this because we're following the rules. I think we just need to figure out how to solve this thing. And I think my recommendation is that let's see if the community will approve a landscaping lighting district citywide.
Just no landscaping? You mean lighting?
I'm sorry, yes. Mr. Lauer, correct. Yes, a just strict lighting district. I apologize. It's just the LMMD thing is just coming out. I'd recommend we try it. And then if the community doesn't wish to go that direction, then I think then we just have to consider what level we allow these track maps to have to join the district. And maybe in the interim, we excuse those with 2 or less lights on a full track map, not phased, just so we keep these small developments like the Mathers. I think they got 11 lots, and it's expensive for them to earn that.
But with 2 or less lights, it still doesn't count. The administrative cost is still higher on this one.
Correct. It is.
So, I don't think 2 lights is the right,
I said 2 or not exempt at 2 or less.
2 or if light poles.
Right.
But I'm saying he said he has 10 light poles and it's still, the administrative cost is still higher than the actual lighting bill.
Right, that's true. But as that track fully develops, the administrative costs are still going to be expensive. That's just, we don't have enough properties in the district to make it to where that cost will be minimal for those.
But to me, if the administrative cost is more than the actual lighting cost, that doesn't make sense to move forward with it. I don't think, I don't think that's being responsible to our citizens to charge them double.
Well, I think in some fairness, I think it's unfair for the new development to have to pay for the lights while everybody else gets a free ride. I think there's an issue of fairness there too, and I think that would solve the issue. And then we'd have to have
right.
one landscaping lighting report a year. That cost would be distributed amongst 13,000 parcels, and it should be considerably less.
But what would there be, what would the citizens, I mean, just, thinking about this, like, what would be their motivation to tax themselves more on something that's already coming out of their taxes? Like,
how are we taxing them twice? I
well,
don't see that.
No. We would be adding a new tax. So it's already, we are already paying the lighting bill now out of what has been collected from taxes from them. It's gas taxes is right now. But what we would say is, all of a sudden, we would remove the lighting cost from the gas tax fund, and now we would create a new tax collection revenue. And yes, we would free up the gas tax, but we're still now adding that onto all of our citizens of Ridgecrest. And judging from them not the rate of the parks 218 and how that went, and that was adding something new, like, or improving parks. I think it's going to be a hard time selling the citizens to vote for, and I don't know if it's like $15 a household or something of that nature. I still think you're going to have a hard time getting buy-in on that.
When I first was on the infrastructure committee a few years ago, I think it was before you guys, it was before, I had said at the time, can we look at a citywide district that indeed, and the question was, well, let me finish, that indeed made, because if I drive by the lights on your street over there, I benefit from driving on a lighted street, but I pay nothing for it.
No,
well, let me
you
finish.
do pay for it.
And so if we had a citywide lighting district, it would seem to me how, and the question I asked at the time, what do you do with those people that have already paid for that district, which was specific to that particular area? How do you deal fairly with them and putting a new one on? Do you refund those dollars? What do you do?
Well, I guess you're going down to, I guess the direction, I guess the binary decision would be is either have a district, have everybody pay equally, fairly, or have the city absorb the light costs and move on.
I don't think that's fair.
Well, I mean,
Where else
technically,
are we heading with this conversation?
The responsibility of the government is to provide services of roads and lights and things like that. So, I mean, to say it's not fair for the government to provide that, I mean, that's what we're here for.
Well, it's not fair out of no money's coming in for it.
In fairness, most communities have lighting districts to pay for this.
They started it back when they started the community, but we didn't do that.
Okay.
And so now what we're trying to do is play catch up, and it's not working out. But what I'm saying is, in many of those cities that already had a lighting district established way back when they originally started, if you go on and Google, most of those, they didn't increase the amount like they were supposed to, and so now they're losing money still. And those cities who already have the district-wide one, the citywide ones, when they go back out and have tried to vote to get it increased, to catch them up to be able to actually pay their lighting bill through their lighting district, it's failed miserably. So we are looking at, so what I'm saying is it would cost, what, $25,000 was what the parks report cost? For the engineer's report.
I believe it was about 30,000.
30,000, and then how much was it to actually send it out to vote?
I believe that was the entire cost.
That was the entire cost.
Yeah.
I thought it was higher than that. I thought we initially did 30, and then it was.
Well, we initially were approved 100, and then it went down really cheap.
Okay, but so it still seems like we would be spending that money to put it out to vote, and then if it doesn't pass, then what do you want to do? If we look at how much we were defeated by on the parks tax, I think that's responsible for us to take into consideration that.
I understand that, but if you're saying it isn't fair the way it is, then we have to find another alternative. And if the other alternative is to make it,
Yes.
I'm sorry. Okay. If the other alternative is to make it everybody pay an equitable amount, then it seems to me that is fair because I benefit from driving on all the streets with lights.
And you do look at probably having an extra couple $100,000 that you can put towards your level of effort towards your road. So it wouldn't be money that wouldn't go towards something worthwhile.
I still don't think you're going to get it to pass. So I understand, but and you're saying it's not fair, but we're paying for it. Like the city funds have come from the citizens' pockets. Like, so to say that we're not paying for it is untrue.
I'm not saying we're not paying for it.
Okay.
We are paying for it.
But you want us to pay more for it.
No, I want us to all pay equitably for it. I don't think because you're new you should pay more than what was paid for by somebody else 10 years ago, unless it's everything is the same. Am I wrong? Somebody explain to me because I don't understand it.
Maybe we want to take public comment and maybe.
Yeah. And so on a citywide lighting district, is that still going to be under the management of Wildan?
Yes.
Okay. It could be Wildan or a similar firm.
And the administrative costs, if we see it, annually for what we're seeing here on individual development, I'm a little concerned about what the citywide landscape administrative costs would look like. So I mean, there's a lot of variables in this. So that's a concern. I know it's not going to get answered tonight, so that's okay. Right. The other question was the standardization, which is kind of, I think, where Mayor Breeden is looking at. Across the board. Right now we will waive it for here for 2 lights, or we're doing this, or we charge Mr. Rulin a certain amount, and it's like, wow, how do we have something a little more straightforward for builders and developers when they come in and say.
Right now it is straightforward. Right now, according to ordinance, if you develop a track map and put a light in, you have to enter the district.
I think what would be straightforward is if we had one column and it said this is what it costs for a light, this is what it costs to maintenance that light. That cost of that light is going to be paid by a developer, and Edison, if he takes over or if they take over at the end of that, it would. I don't know. I've looked at this numerous times and I find it very disheartening that it's hard to understand. It makes sense. The public looks at it. I don't know if they make sense. Maybe I'm just not.
Part of the issue is this is a phased development, and so when you have the district, it's for the entire track map. So if you have 3 phases and you're only doing the first phase, you have to set the district as if the whole thing is there.
I just wish it wasn't so
if we didn't allow phased mapping, let's say Mr. Rulin had to put the entire development in at the same time, then all the costs would equalize. There would be on the left column something similar to what would be collected on the right-hand column. But because it's a phased map, we have to account for all the houses, because once it's established the first time, to change that base number on the left-hand side, we have to create another election. And that's the issue. That's just a product of we're allowing phasing.
So I think we need to do something. And I'm going to go back to the administrative cost, because something that's reoccurring, that's just money to me out the window when it was already designed, implemented, and is being paid for.
Unfortunately, because of the 218 process, it's required every year.
We have to do it.
The only thing we could do would be to attempt to search out another firm that might provide a different price, which we have not done. We could see if there's another engineering firm that might do it for a less of a price. My gut feeling is we might find somebody less, but probably not that much less. But we can check.
Well, also, one thing to remember is there's only there's a larger number, but there's basically just 3 different areas. Okay, there's up on College Heights, there's the area around Walmart, and there's the 2 new Rulin tracks. Those are what's in the lighting and landscape district at this time. That's one of the reasons the administrative costs are a little, they're high.
Yeah.
I mean, because that's what has to finance the entire report.
I think staff is open to whatever council wants to recommend, because I think it's as frustrating for us as it is for you guys, because we're getting the ire of everybody. So I think we just need direction of which way to go.
Let's open it. If there's not any other comments here, let's open it to public comment and see what great ideas y'all may have too.
Yeah, Chuck Ruland, 1213 Carolyn. So one of the things I want to kind of bring to light is the cost of these developments are significantly more than what I thought, and probably what everybody else thinks, to get them actually done. And I'm like my business model right now, if I had to do another one, would not be less than 100 homes, just because of how expensive it is to do. So my take on it is, when we have these infill developments that are inside the city, where they're going to come in and basically complete an undeveloped area, we want to be, from a city standpoint, we want to be encouraging this, and the breakdown, where you're going to find $1,000 for lights, when you actually look at that, there's all kinds of money that, fire, you can name it. There's plenty of reasons to justify not having one of these and having a 50-home development come in and finish, all a main street with curb gutter, sidewalk, and asphalt. And the thing that I want to let everybody know is these are expensive to do. And D.R. Horton, we're not going to have a D.R. Horton come in. They tried. We don't have the demand for a D.R. Horton. Most of these projects are going to need to be phased. If you're going to find somebody that can do a 50-home tract, for the most part, if they're guys local, they're not going to be able to do it not phased. So, I wouldn't, like for me, if I was going to do another one right now, I could not do less than 100 homes, and I would not do more than 2 phases. It's just too expensive. So if we want to get, and the reality is, if you go 2 lights is $200, 3 lights is $300, all the way up to 10 is $1,000. It's not worth establishing the district when you look at the upside of all the money that's going to come in. You got $8,000 per house. I know the city doesn't get it, but it goes to the schools. Schools benefit the community. You got, $1,200 per house that go to the police. There's just so much upside to it to discourage anybody for any reason. And
those costs aren't. I'm sorry. Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
Those costs aren't in other cities. Or are you talking
No,
about the amount?
I did a lot of. What's your question exactly?
Well, you mentioned $1,200 to the police. Is it the amount you're questioning, or the fact that it goes to the police?
That. I have no problem with that. What I'm saying is when you look at all the upside, the money that the city brings in, the money that the schools bring in, the $10,000 a year just in property tax, and the it's just we're talking about $1,000 in lighting, And Barb brought up a real good point. I've been saying it for years. We have no landscaping standard, none. So there is no direction for anybody. So what it always looks like to me, at least in the past, is they put as many plants as they possibly can get in, because they do got to get a number up there.
Yeah, Chuck, we do have landscaping standards. We've just waived them at the staff level because we understand where we're headed.
No, I'm talking specific standards that call out like per plant, and like you said, we need to adjust it accordingly. And a lot of the conversations I have with people all the time is, we're not going to be Santa Clarita. We're not going to be able to sell 1,800 square foot homes for $750,000. When you're doing that, then you can afford to go out and put in these landscapes and have these lighting districts. And most of those tracts that you see down there aren't 50 home infills. They're 400 and 500 home tracts. So what I'm saying is I've got my 2 tracts that I'm working on right now that are going to keep me busy for some time. The city has 2 more tracts coming through with 50 homes. They're my competition, and I don't think that you guys should establish them in a landscape lighting district for your sake, because of all the upside. And because I absolutely know, I'll be surprised if these things actually break ground, because I know what it's costing me to do them, and I know I'm doing it in-house, and I'm selling the lots back to myself. So I've got the best case scenario, and I'm barely, I'm making an out-of-town developer can't come develop those lots and sell those to a home builder. It's not going to work. Once you get, if we do get some sort of annexation where somebody's going to annex in a 250 home tract, or if you have Walmart, obviously Walmart, we needed some trees. Walmart doesn't care. They just wanted it to go away. They signed up. They'll probably pay their $20,000 every year and be happy. But even the upside of Walmart, I mean, they bring in a lot of money. And to me, it's just absolutely a no-brainer. I mean, I'm speaking from the city side now because my two are already on the way. I don't know what everybody else feels, but I know if say I own the city and I had a business partner, I'd be like, hey, you seriously want to charge this? I mean, if you just look at it like that.
So what is your alternative?
My alternative is to get rid of it and realize, if you look at all these numbers.
The landscape district?
Get rid of the landscape lighting districts on infill on infill developments. Because it doesn't matter if you have 2 lights or you have 10 lights. If you got 2 lights, you got $200. If you got 10, you got 1,000 or 1,100. You're talking, and Wildan. I know what Wildan's fee is. It's between $1,000 and $1,500 a year because it's in the reports what we pay them.
And so what do we consider a infill development? I mean, I know what it is, but I mean, as far as size, you know what I'm saying? Like, where would we draw that line to say
I don't know
it's a 40
if it's
home
even,
or a 20 home, or if there's 2 big lots, but there's a huge span between it, and that one could hold 80 or 90 homes. And so it would be an infill between 2 developments, but we're just,
another way you could look at it too is if you can create, because I on the left side too, I know what you got, the 2 lines that Bard's talking about. That left side right there, they can charge that, and I talked to 2 different attorneys. If you go try to fight that, you got to basically get your own engineer report and bring it to staff. We're lucky here in this small town where we can talk to people we know, but in other communities, that left side is a big deal. I mean, theoretically, if say we have an earthquake or whatever, and we get council members on there that think that that's a reasonable amount, they can charge it. That's why the left side's important. I certainly don't think you would want to have to leave landscaping in that's not going to be there to justify the report. I don't care what the explanation is. I understand what he's saying to try to get the numbers to work, but when you have a report, the report should just be what it is. It should just be accurate. You shouldn't be making anything up or leaving anything there. And like Ron was saying, the phase development's going to make that difficult. But we're not going to have developers coming in and doing these unphased, because I don't think we're going to have that type of builder.
You're correct. That number on the left column, if you have a phased development, you have a number of homes for 3 phases. It has to reflect it from the very beginning. Otherwise, we have to come back, and that's just difficult.
No, I understand what you're saying, but the reason why that's important to me is because if council decided to charge that, and I could come up here and dispute it, but for me to actually really dispute it, I would have to go get my own engineer's estimate and actually bring that up. I mean, it was important, we're the ones that are going to get stuck with it if they decide they want to charge us. That's why the left side's just not, when I hear people say, oh, you can't look at the left side. No, you need to look at the left side. We could potentially be charged that.
You're correct. I do understand your concern, but you still have to understand is that we can't take that money for that district and spend it on something other than the benefit of that district. So I guess, council could make that like a huge amount, but one of the safety valves we're trying to develop is bringing these reports back to infrastructure to report to infrastructure before it comes to council to make sure that whatever that retention balance is reasonable and it's not building up too high, and we can adjust that right-hand column accordingly to make sure we're not collecting too much money. So, I mean, I think there's safeguards in there, but I do understand the perception of where you're coming from. But
well, it's not really even my perception now. I'm not fighting my own districts. I'm saying as a city that I live in, that I want to see successful, to have infill developments that are coming in and putting in all this infrastructure and like I said, the upside to selling a house, all the money that the city gets, schools get, everybody gets, to be arguing over $1,000 when $1,000 of lighting when we're paying Willdan $1,500 to push print. They had 3% and push print. And they don't even give us any recommendations, because if they would give us recommendations, they would say, hey, you got $80,000 in reserves on the Horton tract. We should probably not be charging it. But they don't. So it's all around. It to me just doesn't make any kind of sense at all. And I think if you have people that are going to come in, like these 250 home developments that we have coming up, if we can actually get them to break ground, that would be fantastic. We need to go out of our way to make that happen.
Well, and we forgot to talk about it. Like Bard said, it's $3,000 to $7,000 to even start the district.
It's $7,500, and is what it is.
So it's $7,500 to start the district, even to collect $1,000 for lighting.
So,
I know you don't agree with how I'm phrasing that, but
I wasn't going to even discuss.
No, I think Bard's just worried because we're really struggling to do everything we can with the roads and every dollar we can find to put towards that endeavor. And to be frank, if we have a growth spurt, are we going to be eating into that amount? And I think that's his concern. I think that was why it was established, out of.
But we're also increasing the road fund. Every time we have one of these new developments come in, we're increasing our traffic. This one, we're getting $100,000 in new traffic impact fees.
Right, and that money can only be spent on specific things. That's not. We can't use that for maintenance. That's
you can't.
for.
Not a bit. Has to be for new.
New expand.
It's based upon our impact
Newer
fee structure,
expansion,
yeah.
yes.
So it has to be new.
And it has to be on an arterial.
Yeah, it's an arterial.
Collector or just arterial?
Intersection, signalization, and major arterial.
Okay.
So I guess I think this is a great conversation. I think staff is just looking for an answer of what council wishes to move forward. Yes, we could, if we eliminate the landscape lighting districts, you're still going to have people, like Walmart and the Horton tract that's already in the district. They have landscaping costs. You're looking probably upwards to $30,000, $40,000 a year. I think, I don't know what the bids came in for a year to maintain that. If we give that up, that has to come out of our fund.
No, I'm not saying, I don't think we should give up the ones that are existing, like the large Walmart or the larger developments. I'm saying for these small infill ones, it's like he said, it's not making sense, and it might be deterring some of them from happening.
Well, some of the infill, if you're talking infill in Ridgecrest Heights, that's different. They don't have lights out there. They're not brought into the district. I guess what you're talking about is infill.
No, I'm talking about, like
maps.
opportunities, kind of like infill, like I guess would be like behind Home Depot if somebody ever wanted to develop in
So I guess it's a definition of what we consider infill.
Well, it's going to be whatever. And whatever
decides.
My point is to try to find $1,000 with all the actual real numbers sitting right here to pay for some lights. The upside outweighs the downside to the point where it's not even worth really discussing. I think if you're annexing in, I would go where if you don't have to make the report up, and any line item doesn't have to be made up, and you can actually generate a real report that justifies the costs on the report, that's what I would start with.
That's a good place to start.
Yeah, just start there. If you don't leave $3,500 in landscaping that you're not going to do to make it pencil out, then this one might be one that you want to consider. Like D.R. Horton, they've got the drainage sump, they've got the landscaping along, and Walmart, you've got a bunch of landscaping there, but if you're just, and you're going to have some of these are going to be phased projects, but you'll have to figure that out. I would just hate to see, knowing how expensive these are, pushing away these smaller 50 home developments, because that's all we're going to get. I hear all this annexation, beyond Mahan. I know the couple guys that were even talking about that's not happening, and we'll find out if these 250 lot developments break ground. I'd be shocked if they did once they started adding everything up. And kind of like what Peggy touched on, why are these homes just paying landscaping? Nobody else in town is. I mean, lighting, let's just say lighting, for example. I mean, why nobody else in town's paying it? Why are these guys, why are they going to be paying it?
The Water District has xeriscape landscaping standards. We had adopted, unless we've changed it, to follow the Water District's landscaping standards, are we not?
Yes, for
Okay.
For front yards, but the last couple of developments for perimeter landscaping, we waived it.
I would like us to, if you want my direction on where we should go, I would say all development right now ought to be xeriscape.
Well, it currently is. I mean, our ordinance matches the Water District's ordinance. In
That's
fact,
what I
think
thought.
we have
so
to.
So why would we want to have a landscape district anywhere if you must do what the Water District has adopted?
Because Water District still allows for plants. What we've been doing lately is just doing decomposed granite on the perimeters.
Or whatever.
And no landscaping.
Yes, something that doesn't require water.
Correct. I do believe, Mr. Rulin, we've waived your...
Yeah, and
right.
One of the things I wanted to... Because you can do xeriscape that looks nice with over on the 7188 track.
Right.
I put 3 boulders in with gold rock on top of 3 inches of DG with a vapor barrier. And I'm not saying that there's never going to be maintenance. Obviously, you're going to have wind blowing in. And I didn't make any penetrations to put my boulders in where the weed vapor is. And things like that where literally I'm not going to have a weed next year. Not one. And eventually you're going to have some sand blowing.
You're not going to have a what?
There won't be weeds growing through it.
Weeds,
It's like
okay.
it's basically, if you do it right, it's like concrete, and it looks great. All the neighbors like it. I get a lot of compliments on it. There's no plants. There doesn't need to be any plants.
It doesn't mean it has to be just dirt. It can be
Exactly. If you go look at what I've done over there, that's kind of what when we adopt some sort of standard. I know, it can be pretty simple. If you go to Vegas in certain areas, obviously on the Strip, they got a lot of plants. There's other developments they have in Vegas where they don't have any plants alongside the street. They might have some by their entrance. There's all kinds of, and we all got to collectively as a community realize that we're not ever going to be selling. Ron mentioned that it's artificially low as far as the pricing, but the fact of the matter is we're selling our homes for as much as we can. If it's artificially low, well, that's just what we can sell them for.
That's what the market is.
Yeah, that's the way that the market is. So we all have to work together on that type of stuff.
So where are we going with this?
This still doesn't solve the lighting portion
I know that.
of it. And so,
I got that.
Yeah.
And then the lighting is just seriously. I mean, I have to. I can't imagine anybody seriously looks at this and goes, "How are we going to find $1,000 for lights?" I mean, seriously. That's really how I feel because
we're trying to punish for $1,000 of lights. We're trying to make up for the $250,000 that we're already paying out, and so I don't think.
Well, I think what we're doing is we're trying not to get deeper in the hole. Is what we're trying not to. And like I said, I agree. It is a frustrating matter.
But we're still collecting property tax of $10,000, which if the light is $1,000, then you still have $9,000 left over.
If I remember correctly, Ron, correct me if I'm wrong, a lot of our property tax doesn't actually come to us, it goes elsewhere.
No, that's the actual part that comes to us.
No. Yeah, we get about 5.8% of the 1%.
So
okay, some of it doesn't go to the redevelopment thing in other places?
No, that's the other income.
Okay.
That's the actual part that comes to us. That dollar amount is I calculate what actually comes to the city.
Okay. So, but the one thing Ron kind of mentioned that he saw me cringe a minute ago. The one thing I want to remind you is every time you add a piece of infrastructure, it's more we must maintain with the same. Excuse me. Every time you put in a curb and gutter, not curb and gutter, no. Every time you put in a street, we have to maintain the streets. Like again, maybe not much over the next 10 years, but still, it comes down eventually. If you add, the gas tax has gone down and down and down over the last 10 years, and which I don't understand because people are driving more and they're buying more gas, but it keeps going down.
The governor diverting it.
I'm sorry?
The governor diverting it.
Well,
Tend not to argue there.
all I'm saying is that less and less is coming to maintenance units everywhere. So it's just.
But we're not. Why I was shaking my head is we don't maintain the lights.
No, we don't.
So.
But if we have to pay for them instead of the district's paying for them, that's more money that comes out of what we can maintain. Otherwise on streets is all I was saying.
But we also, that's part of why we did Measure B, was because the gas tax was going down and we knew we needed to supplement our roads.
Without Measure V, we'd be in a very deep hole, okay? There's no doubt about that.
So what's our goal here? Where are we going?
I guess the goal is to try and solve a problem.
Okay, so how are we going to do that?
Well, we're either going to solve the problem by us going the way of a citywide district. We could also do away with the lighting districts and not form any additional districts, maybe residential in nature. And then anything residential, we'd absorb the cost. If it's commercial, we make them go into the district, we could go that route. We can identify what size track map we would want to have them enter the district in. I don't know if that enters the realm of Lloyd on, I mean, I guess there's, we're already creating an unfair system by the way we're doing it. We could create, what the minimum amount would be to create the district or have them enter the district. We could do it that way. So there's probably three possible solutions, and I think what staff is looking for is for us just to come up, solve the problem, and then stick with it. If we want to continue on the path, then we just say this is where we're at. You're gonna, if you want to develop a track map, you pay for the map. We move on, and that's the way it is. And then staff, we just need to do our due diligence to make sure that Wildan is charging the appropriate administrative fees, and we monitor it. So I guess what we're looking for may not be tonight, but we're just looking for direction how to proceed, so we can come to a solution on this one way or the other.
Is the direction going to come from infrastructure, or is it going to come from another council discussion?
I think it's going to come
or can we have a workshop?
I think it needs to come from council. I mean, if you want to have a workshop on it, we can, but I think we're coming back to the same issue. If we continue on the same path, you're going to hear the same complaints.
Same things, yeah.
Then what you're going to have to say is, if that's the deal, you're just going to have to say that's our policy, that's our ordinance, we're moving on. That's one way to handle it, or you could take it to a vote, and if it fails, then you go to Plan B.
I think it makes sense to keep it for commercial, and I think we just need to, can we not say allow planning commission to look at it like more carefully, saying, I mean, obviously we see 10 lights, the lights cost is less than the administrative cost. I think when you see it start to be the administrative cost.
Well, the administrative costs if we had more properties in the district, the administrative cost would be less throughout. I mean, it's a scale of economy. I would recommend, if we're going to go that route, that we pick it, because we are going to come back. We do have an RFP out to update our design standards. Part of our design standards is going to be where our lights are placed at, how they're placed in mid-block, how they're placed at the intersections. It's going to cover our landscaping. We do know that we need to skinny our landscaping everywhere. We need to start cutting back now, and I think this is the time to do it, to show the city's moving forward on our plan on how new development's supposed to look. So, we could go that route.
And I think also next year we'll see a reduction in our lighting costs because of LEDs.
Slightly, about 16,000.
Okay.
About 16,000 left. So what we could do is we could bring it back to infrastructure, and not to delay it. We could bring it back to infrastructure and just come up with a plan where we require commercial development to enter the district, and maybe some infill tract developments and We find out what that break point is on the lights. If you're going to be developing a tract that's going to include more than 15 lights, then you have to enter the district. But the problem is that, Chuck, how many lights are you looking at?
10.
10, okay.
13 in the other one.
Right. So, I mean, the point is that you may still have that chart because it's going to be phased. Now the deal is that when somebody comes up with a track map, they may say, I'm going to build 100 homes and it's going to be 3-phase, but really they're only going to, let's say, only build the first phase. So you may have that number that looks big, but they never build out at that point in time. So we're going to have to come up with a number and just say, if it's a track map with less than 10 lights, we don't require them to enter it. If it's 10 or more, they have to enter the district, and that's our policy, and we work forward.
And commercial stays the same.
And commercial stays the same, but we have to be careful. We did have the hookup with obviously the Mallorys and the Warrens, where we had 1 light or 2 light and we're requiring in the district. So we may want to consider that, but that might be a balanced solution, because you really don't want somebody to come in and build 100 homes or 150 homes, and then that light, the burden of the lights and the landscaping falls on the city. We don't want that. So maybe we come up with a way. I don't know if Ms. Stevens is amenable to this. We bring it back to infrastructure and we find out what that break point is, and then come back with a recommendation.
I would like to see it go back to infrastructure. You've done the work on it. You know how you and Mike know how you got to where you are. I'd like to see that come back to infrastructure with input from the community, and then come back to us. I know I'm going to ask in a minute, but that seems to be a fair way to try to answer some of these questions. Okay, Mike?
Okay. I'm just going to offer a few things up, and then if there's any questions, you'll quite understand what I'm getting at. And please ask. This is actually a really simple problem. If you look at how you run your city and how you take care of your home, Ridgecrest, in the most basic fundamental fashions, you think about, okay, citizens live here, they pay their property tax, they pay their sales tax, we pay a sewer tax, we pay a tax for police and streets. So what should we be getting for all of that? Well, for a long time, we got streetlights included in what we are already paying for taxes. So I'll just say, if you propose a citywide lighting district, it's going to cost us more money. I'm going to fight it just like I did the parks tax, because I think that's totally unfair. So what do you do when people build more houses? Well, golly gee, they pay property tax too. So why don't they just get street lights paid for? It's hard to see how that electricity cost for those street lights really is very much at all. Yeah, across the city, it adds up if you want to add it up, but that's what we pay property tax for. It should be. So, seems simple to me. Make the landscaping stuff all rock and gravel. There's no maintenance to be done on it. If, and I don't think there is, if there's any upfront cost to the city for putting in street lights, which I believe it's non-existent, then make the developer pay that, put it in. Now you have eliminated all these exorbitant costs to this consultant every single year. You've eliminated these exorbitant costs for forming, another little district here, a little district there, so forth and so on. You've saved yourself all this time you spent talking about this, so it's a relatively small amount of money, and then you just go on with life and you're done with it. It's really, it's hard to see how it's really any harder than that. It's been, over the years, somehow it's been made into this complicated thing. Whoever had the brilliant idea to start lighting districts, which is really just another means of getting more money out of your citizens. That's what these things are all about. And of course, as we see, it only costs 150% more to pay the consultant every year than it really should cost. So it just goes up and up and up, and shouldn't have been there to start with. So just say, forget it. There are no lighting districts. You paid your property tax, you get street lights with it. It's that simple.
Thank you.
Chuck Rulin Sr., I just got one simple question. If we're going to get $1,000 in for the lighting, and it's going to cost us $1,500. Doesn't that cost the city $500? Aren't we at a $500 loss?
No, because we're charging the property owners. That's what they're paying.
No, but the $1,500, the city's who pays for the consultant? Okay, so the ratepayers. So okay, that's not the city. Then the ratepayers are losing $500. The property owners are losing $500 a year by implementing this. Correct?
They're actually losing $1,500 a year.
Well, but theoretically, they're going to get $1,000 worth of value, and then they're going to have to pay $1,500 for that. So
No,
under ideal circumstances, for 10 streetlights, do the property owners lose $500 a year?
Not each property owner.
No, the 10 tracks.
But and I think you've got it slightly wrong. If we just take the administrative cost and just take the lighting cost, it comes out. If you want to use $1,000 and $1,500, it costs all the property owners $2,500.
For $1,000 worth of lights, they're paying $2,500.
Oh, so they're actually losing $1,500. Thank you for clarifying that for me. I thought they were only losing $500. So they're paying $1,500 more than they're getting for service.
That's correct.
Now, mind you,
correct me if I'm wrong. Plus, you're making all these numbers up to get that number.
No, sir.
Can you show? Could you have?
No, sir.
Do you have a
That's
cost?
not correct, sir.
Do you have a BOE?
Hey, Barb.
Do you have a basis of estimate on the cost?
If you look at the right,
Hey,
at
Barb.
the right-hand column, the right-hand
Barb.
column is a basis of cost. They're not making up anything in there at all.
Hey, Bard.
Yes, sir.
It's all good.
No, but is a BOE based on labor? I'm just asking. Do you have a BOE for the cost of landscape? You said there's not going to be any landscaping costs. Mr. Neal comes up, and even the city says we're going to have rock and gravel. Why should we? We're not going to have any plumbing, correct? Why would they make up numbers to get that side to look what you need it to look to charge the fees? If you're going to have the zero, I know they're separate. You could even separate these, like Mr. Neal said, and eliminate everything with landscaping. Your own discussion here earlier is we're running out of water. I go up to the Horton thing, and I see them running water. I walk there every day. I see them running water down College Boulevard every day. Their sprinklers are broke. Thank you for cleaning up the encroachment, but it's insane. I mean, I can take a picture for you, Peggy, every day if you want me to, every week, and send you pictures of water running down College Heights Boulevard from the Horton thing. I mean, please have councilman go look at it. That's what you do, but then you're up here talking about the GA where you have no water. Makes no sense. I'll go. This doesn't make sense to me at all.
Okay, is there any other public comment? Okay, so where are we with this? So you're going to come up with some information, we'll send it to...
My understanding is this is going to go back to infrastructure for the
Okay.
review of maintaining new commercial developments in the district, and then developing a certain number of infill or new tracks what that break number is that we're going to require them to enter the district, and then we'll come back to council.
Okay.
That sounds
Okay, with you?
But what are we going to do in the meantime? Do we have anything coming forward that's what's going to be a problem?
I think we have the Mather tracks out there, but I think the recommendation on that one was to waive it because it's only one or two lights.
Will Dan already told us. Yeah, Will Dan already told us to waive that one.
I think that if we get it on the January infrastructure, we can probably, get through this within a month or two. I'd like to be able to get an answer, get this back to everybody.
Okay.
I mean, I think we've been toiling with it long enough, and we just need to come up with a number and move forward.
Yes.
Okay, next item. Discussion and potential action whether to authorize the organization Immigration Reform Law Institute to list Ridgecrest as a participant in the IRLI's forthcoming amicus brief in support of the federal government's petition to the U.S. Supreme Court to review the Ninth Circuit Court's ruling in the legal challenge by the United States to California SB 54. Sir.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. I'll report on this. First, let me just remind people or explain what an amicus brief is. It means amicus refers to friend of the court. It's a brief that non-parties who are interested in the topic submit to the court just to give the court their thoughts on it, either because they have an interest in it or because they have an expertise in it. For example, League of California Cities, not in this case, but League of California Cities often submits amicus briefs to courts when there's a case that is of interest to them. So in this case, I think the city clerk put out copies. Yeah, they're down there. Okay. So in this particular amicus brief, right now the cities that have decided to sign on to it, the question before the council is whether to add the city of Ridgecrest's name to this particular amicus brief. Right now, the brief is showing City of Santa Clarita, City of Tehachapi, and City of Vista, and then some individuals. There may be others, like the City of Ridgecrest, who just haven't notified them yet to add the name. All right, so let me tell you about the case. City of Ridgecrest did add its name to a similar brief written by the same group, IRLI, last September 2018. This involves the litigation between the United States and the state of California over California's so-called sanctuary state laws. The one that's now at issue is the state law SB 54, and SB 54 involves where the state of California made it a law that the state and local law enforcement would not assist U.S. immigration officials in certain ways. Let me describe what that is. SB 54 restricts state and local law enforcement from cooperating with federal immigration efforts, such as providing release dates or transferring detained individuals to immigration officials, detaining individuals based on federal hold requests, providing individuals' home or work addresses to immigration officials, and making or intentionally participating in arrests based on immigration warrants. So that's the state law SB 54. The United States sued California to try to get the court to issue an injunction to prevent the state from enforcing that law. The United States lost in the trial court, federal trial court, the district court, and then it was appealed to the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeal last year, and that's the one where City of Ridgecrest put its name on this amicus brief. Now, and the United States lost at the Ninth Circuit. Now the United States is trying to appeal to the U.S. Supreme Court. So the U.S. is asking the Supreme Court to hear the case, and it is that request that this group, this organization, IRLI, has prepared another brief to submit to the Supreme Court in favor of the United States. I could get into the legal arguments if you're interested, but basically it's the fight between the U.S. arguing supremacy clause, that that federal laws are supreme over state laws, and the counter-argument that the state is arguing, which has so far won at every level, is that the 10th Amendment to the Constitution that's the one that says that any powers not given to the federal government are reserved to the states. So the courts have interpreted that to mean that the federal government cannot, the term is commandeer state and local officials. The federal government cannot order the state to use its personnel to accomplish federal efforts. So far, that's what has been winning at these levels. So those are basically the two competing arguments here. And again, this is a organization that is inviting cities to join its brief. So that's what's before the council. All I would have to do is call up or email the lawyers and say, yes, the Ridgecrest has decided to add its name, and then they would add.
Tell Tell us the significance and the cost and the impact to the city of Ridgecrest should we put our name.
No cost to the city. It's purely, I suppose it's it could be reported, so it might be reported in the press, so it's publicity. And really, I can't think of any other impact.
Questions from council?
I think, I think we should continue. We've voted twice now on this already. Obviously, it was different levels each time. And so, to me, it seems like I think we should continue to take our stand of the state overreaching on this and say that we don't support it because I think, as Mr. Maurer said, it's put him in conflict as a business owner. He's either violating federal law or state law. And so I think it just seems like something we should continue to support this effort. And especially, it's no cost to the city. So,
personally, I don't think there ought to be sanctuaries anywhere, depending on where I live. I don't have to abide by the 40-mile-an-hour speed limit. I'm taking this to the nth degree, that because this is a sanctuary city, and I don't think we should have to abide by any other state or federal rules. I think the rules are for everybody. They're fair and equitable. And do I want to see things happen that allow us to tell people that they have to leave this community or that they must stay in order to be protected? I think the rules should apply to everybody. So I don't like doing this, and I don't know. I think we've had 25 or 30 people up here arguing in favor of and against sanctuary cities in Ridgecrest a few months ago. I don't want to go through that again. Everybody heard, and one of the reasons I voted against it last time was because we got it the day of the council meeting, and I said I have difficulty approving this without reading it, but I'd like to hear council's comments and the public comment.
So, yeah, I think that immigration is a federal issue, whether people are, coming in from the north to south, east to west coast, and so to, hamstring or limit the federal government from doing their job and instilling, the immigration laws, I think it's an injustice to all the immigrants who are here, legally, and so I think you can't get around the fact that it is a federal thing, and so I support us staying on track with it. So.
Okay, can we hear from the public?
Scott Leahy. Do we have a copy of this amicus brief? Oh, it's right here. It wasn't in the agenda. Was there a reason for that, or?
It only became available yesterday.
Oh, it just became available yesterday. Okay. Okay, then, yeah, let me just take a look at it here.
Go ahead.
Is this it right here?
Yes, sir. Yep.
All right. Thank you. I'll let Dave talk. Can I reserve my time while I read it real quick?
No.
Yeah. Go ahead.
Okay, Dave.
Yes, I think, and Mr. Heyman, I have to remind you once again, please speak into the mic. Makes it a little easier to understand what you're saying. The question of who gets into this country is the federal government, not the states. And if somebody comes in and says, I don't want to come in legally. I want to come in and I'm going to go on because I'm just a bad guy, I want to go in on a bloodthirst feast and just start killing people. We're not going to stand by and let that happen, and I don't think we should. And that's exactly what could happen and can happen and has happened when we put these sanctuary cities in where the local law enforcement people cannot apprehend these gangsters, these criminals. That's what they are. So we have to step up to the plate and let the federal government do its job. And we need to start pushing on the state to do its job as well. There's a hell of a lot of things that are going on up there in Sacramento that should not be going on and are just plain stupid. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dave.
Amen.
Madam Mayor, council members, Ronald Porter. There's three basic aspects to this illegal alien problem, or sanctuary cities, or whatever you want to call it. The first one is, yes, the federal government has absolute control, at least writing the rules. But then it gets divided into two other issues. One is, they say the federal government, per the court, can't require the state government to spend their money to enforce federal law, which is highly questionable in the fact that really they're not enforcing, they're simply acknowledging there's a stay order or a federal warrant. They don't not stop arresting or putting people forward to the federal government on a bank robbery charge. It's a federal offense. They still do it. They still exercise it. But yet, we're going to select this one right out of this group and say, no, we're not going to. But more important is, if we as a city of Ridgecrest wanted to spend our money to notify on ISIS we had somebody, that would be perfectly legal as long as the state wasn't spending money on it. We pay for our police department. It would be perfectly legitimate, and the state has no authority to tell us we can't. Federal police officers, city police officers, they enforce federal law all the time. This is people trying to nitpick and get into this little bitty piece and say, we can't do that. If you read the federal law, all these city councils that write sanctuary city laws, they're felons. If the president or the Department of Justice wanted to, when they write a sanctuary city law, it's called aiding and abetting. They could issue federal warrants for them. There's no question about that. Whether they would or not, that's another story. The only issue, especially when it comes to notifying ICE on these people, is does the state spend money on it? But they all use that, NC, whatever it is, I can't remember the name of it, the federal database for searching warrants. They all do it. It's just simply putting a hold on them. It's all, caboodle science when they try and make these little pieces and pull them out. There's also a factor here that you all took an oath to uphold and support the Constitution. And believe it or not, that's individually, not like the court says you have to do this, that's individually. If you believe that this is wrong, you have an obligation to step up and say, yeah, this is not a big deal, let's go ahead and follow through on it. In fact, our government, the founders, they actually put more power in your hands, the smaller parts of government. That's where they wanted the government decisions to be made. They didn't want you to kowtow to the federal government. They didn't want you to kowtow to this. I mean, even we keep hearing about, and I'm not really talking about this issue, it just happened to be on the agenda tonight, the lighting district. We keep having to raise our taxes because the state government keeps stealing it from us. Well, We're either going to have to step up to the plate and say enough is enough. We're going to have to step up to the plate and say, hey, you can't do that. This is within our jurisdiction. Either that or we're going to be totally overrun. We might as well just throw the city council and our city right out the door and say, hey, state government, come here and do it. There's a thing called unfunded mandates. I've told the city council dozens of times. They come down just recently and says, the police officers have to have this training. They didn't pay for it. City council says, fine, we don't have to do it either. That's what the statute says. If they don't pay for it, you don't have to do it. And a really nice part of something like that is that guess what? Number one, they have the burden, but number two, you don't become the moving party and go argue against it. You say, we're just not doing it. Then they're the moving party and they have to show the authority. That's how you win. You can't play the game and make you play by their rules. We have to stand up and say, we're citizens. We had enough. Our country was based on individual liberty and freedom, and we have to go back there. If we're going to keep following down this road and say, oh, whatever they want. Oh, they can make up these rules. Oh, the court can rewrite the rules. We either stand up or we're going to be done. Thank you.
Thank you.
Scott, again, I had a moment to look it over. Thank you very much for affording me that opportunity, Council. Yeah, I looked it over. There's nothing horribly egregious in the thing. In other words, it doesn't get into racist nonsense and stuff like that. So it appears as if it's pretty much just a straightforward advocacy that the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution doesn't apply in this case. I'd like to just bring forth for your attention that the tables can turn. Now, I'm going to talk about the real politic of this right now. What's going on is that we have a governor in Sacramento that we don't like, and we have a vast majority of more liberal Democrats running this state, and we happen to have a more conservative federal government. What I want to bring to your attention is that when you do things such as this, those are political wins, and those political wins change. And so you may at some point in time end up with a decision that really fines for the federal government's power over the states. Okay? That's maybe what you will end up with. That can come and bite you in the posterior later on. And so I'm just bringing this up for you. I mean, I don't think it matters. There are like 3 signatories on this thing. They ain't got squat. It's like, why are we sticking our neck out for it when we may have a situation come up in 5 or 10 years where the state and the federal roles are reversed? And then the federal government comes to us and goes, oh, we want you to expend your money and do these things in service of what we want, gun confiscation or whatever. It may be something that you don't like. And so all I'm saying is for the momentary convenience to satisfy yourself that you've made yourself the 4th city on the list, have you also done something that may impact us in the future? And that's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Any other comment? Okay, any other council comment? Is there a motion?
I move approval to add ourselves to the brief.
Second.
3 ayes, 1 absent with Mr. Maurer. Motion carries.
Okay, next item on the agenda. I lost my agenda.
Committee reports. I
Committee
think
reports.
the
please.
only one that's met since the last meeting is finance.
Scott.
So yes, we did meet with the Finance Committee. The two main topics was the first quarter budget review, and right now not all the numbers are in, so it's a little bit on the light side or rough side on the numbers. So we were informed that by second quarter those numbers should, more numbers should be in, and it should be more accurately reportable. So, and then the second thing that we went over was the employee compensation review that is going on, and it looks like around April we should have a firm report back on that. So that's in progress, and that was it on the finance.
Okay. And none of the other committees met, I understand. Okay, let's go to other cities, boards, or commissions. Anybody? Okay, city manager's report.
Yes, Madam Mayor, member of City Council. Just to give you an update, if you noticed out front, the columns that were damaged in the earthquake have been fixed. At the same time, we also fixed the circle. We've removed the grass here probably the next week or so before the Christmas tree is lit. We're going to be placing barriers and rocks in the circle. We're hoping that's going to solve the problem and increase the look to the city. That's just the first phase. Staff would like to start working on. I got buzzed.
You're done. Sorry.
Yeah, I'm done. Staff would wants over the next couple of years to start, removing strategically some grass at City Hall and replacing it with rock. I believe we're going to find a committee to bring that back to discuss. But I think there's a benefit in reducing our use of water. It should also increase the look of the city hall. So we're going to be working on that here in the near future. As for the BMX park, I did ask Mr. Patton to place it on the agenda for January Quality Life. If that meeting's been canceled, we may have to move it out to possibly February. I did look at that AB 1146. There's nothing in there that requires the city to allow BMX bikes in the skate park. As you know, that park was designed and developed for skateboarders, not scooters or BMX bikes. One of the reasons why we took control and began enforcing bikes at the skate park was we were having complaints from parents regarding BMX bikes having conflict with skateboarders. So I do believe that it would be appropriate to bring it back to see if the council wishes to, allow BMX bikes in there. But I do think that, we shouldn't be bullied into allowing them back in there and Mr. Catlin's threat that they're going to, accept all the tickets they want. That's fine if they choose to. But I think we need to bring it back and allow, some review of that before we just change it just because we have a couple people in hollering at us. And the only reason why they're here is because we began enforcing it. And the reason why we began enforcing it again is because we had complaints from parents of skateboarders. And so I think that we need to look at it a little bit deeper. We don't, go from one angry group to another angry group. So I think that committee would be the appropriate place to look at it. And I have asked Mr. Lauer to step up to give you an update on our stop signs and a few other projects that he's working on.
Well, after Councilperson Stevens stole all my thunder on the stop signs, but the stop signs are in there. We had a little trouble the first night, even though there was changeable message signs out and flashing stop ahead signs. The red flashing lights are on back order, and it's just what it is. If you go out there tonight, I'm going out on the way out. Les says that he's put those solar-powered lights to flash down on the stop signs until we can get the red flashers out there. Unfortunately, with the rain today, we don't have a clue how much charge they got. So, hopefully we'll get a little sun towards the end of the day, so maybe they'll last tonight. Maybe they won't, but at least we're trying to make them more visible. But with all the signs out there, you would think that people would be looking for them as opposed to just... But anyway, okay. The crosswalks are almost done, so we're getting there. Certainly by the end of next month, for sure. My guess is just in a week or so. Slurry is completed for the season. I will have a report to council and the papers maybe tomorrow, but probably next week, on how much we got done and where it got done. The standards request for proposal went out yesterday or the day before. It's due back the end of December, if I remember correctly. The ward RFP is due tomorrow. So, and it's just for the preliminary engineering. So I'm looking at our infrastructure committee member. So it's just for the design up front. Lots of other stuff going on. We got a new engineer that started 2 weeks ago. Yay. And she's coming right along. She's learned quite a bit about pavement management already, so she should be getting going fairly soon here, I would think.
And our new street sweeper came. Our new street sweeper came?
It has not.
It has not yet.
And what's even more frustrating is the tanker has been ordered since January or February for the slurry, and they're talking next month still. And they keep saying next month and next month. So you're going to laugh at me, but I sicked Rebecca on them. So she has said that she will make them understand that this is not acceptable. And if we still have problems, then I'll step in. But
and so on the slurry machine and paving, so I've had several very positive comments on what's been done, the triangle, and it's been really, really good. And I've had a couple people ask me about, well, when's my road going to be done? And I was wondering if you could, I think it would be good to keep it up in the public, forefront, and if you could maybe update us on like when the next season will start and what the road mapping will be like. You had that one day where everybody was pretty excited to see that map, and myself included, and kind of looking, well, where's my street out on there? I mean, so.
So the report on this year, like I said, will be either tomorrow or next week. So you can see what was done in the spring and what we accomplished in the fall here. Mm-hmm. We've changed our process a little bit. We've already laid out the maximum we think we can get done next spring. Okay, and I've given the list to Les because I want the streets prepped before we ever get there. We had a few that weren't quite prepped this year, and it slowed us down a little bit. So that we've gone that step. I thought that what I would do is I generally give, last year was the first one for me, but I'd like to give you guys an update in February on what's going on and what's going to happen this next year. Ron and I talked about it at staff today, that's what we'll do in February. Tonight's just a little one, but I do want to get you the information on what was done this year. One thing that we will be able to do, I would say, is by the end of spring, we should have a pretty good handle on what we're going to get done each year, and then we can put together at least a couple-year plan and get a little more information and bump it up to a 5-year. So,
good. Thank you.
Now, we did have, you guys, might as well talk about this for a second. You guys gave us money out of Measure V to do paving this year. Good news and bad news. I'm going to have to use the money to do the crack seal because we have to pay to have that done before we get any reimbursement. Some of it will be reimbursed at 92%. Some will be reimbursed only at 75%. But I have to have the money to pay for that up front. So I'm going to use the paving money to do that. When we get reimbursed, then I'll be able to go ahead with the paving program. So it might not make it before summer sometime. So I'm just, sorry, I should have brought that up at infrastructure, but I didn't know
But we'll still be able to do a spring season.
Spring slurry?
Yes.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
We're not talking about, I'm talking about the actual pave, not the resurfacing that slurry is. I mean mill and fill paving.
Okay.
That was in my budget for this year as well. But
like
I said, unfortunately, I got to have the money
right
to do the crack fill so we can get reimbursed.
Yeah, we had 3 roads that were identified that were beyond slurry. I think Reeves was one, East Wilson was another.
Ward.
Yeah, but not all 3 blocks, just the first 2 blocks past Sunland.
Yeah, so we'd identified a couple roads that were beyond slurry that we were going to do that we'll hold off on.
And
But at the end of the day, we're still looking at that money will be used to fix the cracks in the roadway, which will improve our roadway surface. So there is still a benefit, and we will get back between 75 and 92%. So, but that those cracks are the ones that we've identified.
And we're doing the work, but they're paying us back. No, we're hiring out the crack seal because they're busy prepping the roads for slurry.
They are. We don't have the manpower, nor do we have the amount of equipment and stuff needed to do this much work.
Right. And one of the things that Mr. Lauer is going to report on this next year is there anything we can do to increase the number of roads we're slurrying, whether it be hiring a couple additional people, what the cost benefit on that is, purchasing another slurry machine, what that would take. So I know I'm getting ahead of my skis here a little bit, but we're gonna name it. But I think that we are going to look at what we can do with our current staff. Do we have any latitude of hiring a couple more people that would relieve Jason of us borrowing his folks? Because it's a yin and yang.
Well, plus if we had those people during the summer, we could take better care of the tumbleweeds and stuff instead of having everybody out prepping and doing other stuff. You have to remember that the 12 weeks, the quarter of the year we lose to slurry, it's hard to make up, that during the off seasons while we're prepping as well. So that might be in next year's budget for sure.
Yeah. Okay. So that analysis will be part of it. So.
Sorry, that's. Yeah.
That's all we have for right now, yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, future agenda items, anybody? Okay, mayor and city council comments? None. I have none. Okay, then we will adjourn. Please note the schedule for meetings in over the holidays. Thank you all for coming.